years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A warm welcome to your whatever day it is evening here as we head towards Christmas here on Talk. I'm Jonny Gould. Nick, what an excellent show that was. Particular highlight was the interview that I did with Peter Cardwell as he made a sharp exit for the Hollybobs in his car, talking about how we deal with the sudden uptick in the terror threat. And when I say the sudden uptick, I'm talking about the foiled, massive Bataclan terror attack, which could have precipitated a huge disaster in Britain amongst the Jewish community and beyond, because it would have sent shockwaves that would have been permanent to this country. First of all, I can tell you that many Jewish people would think, this isn't the country we grew up in, we might have to leave, but where do we go? But also for other minorities. For example, Hindus and Sikhs also don't feel safe with the threat of Islamism. Also, people of faith, Christians, don't feel safe in this country. And I find that very, very sobering and something that this government needs to deal with. But the question is, will they ever? Are they on the side of the British people? Or are they, in terms of human rights, whatever that means in 2025/2026, nominally on the side of the terrorists? As Peter said to Nick, when Sir Keir Starmer declared for Palestine, what was he doing? Without condition for Hamas handing back the then hostages. There's only one hostage left and he's a dead man, unfortunately. So what do? We're going to have Rupert Lowe on in just a moment, and we'll talk further about Wes Streeting, and he really wants to be the next Prime Minister, but if not now, when, is the question we're going to ask. And non-crime hate incidents, this is the Daily Telegraph from today, and that is that what they call non-crime hate incidents, which is very Orwellian, isn't it? Perfect for 2025, or indeed any time since 1984, are to be scrapped under plans that police chiefs will present to the Home Secretary next month. So without further ado, let's get straight into the show and talk to Rupert Lowe. Rupert, welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Good evening, Rupert. Yeah, Merry Christmas to you.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas to you too. This story is enormous, and we await for the sentencing of these two men, fanatics inspired by the Bataclan tragedy and Islamic State, face life in jail after they were found guilty of plotting a gun attack on Jewish targets in Manchester, which police say could have been Britain's worst ever terrorist atrocity. And Rupert, we have seen a few of these since 2005. The message has to be clearly understood. We are lucky. We have swerved one here.
Well, I don't know what about you, Johnny, but I think at the end of the day, we've seen more and more of this as we've seen, if you like, communities who haven't integrated within our Christian culture. And I think what you've got to remember is that Islam is a much more aggressive religion than many others. And, you know, literally, if you look at what happened to Salman Rushdie and you look at what happens to people who actually speak out about what they truly believe, if it offends the Islamic culture, then ultimately they take quite aggressive steps towards people. And that's not what we're all taught to do as part of our Christian ethic. So it's a bit like mixing oil with water, and I think you only have to look at the history of Lebanon, that was a Christian country, and the warnings are all there, really, and we need to, I think, sit up and take notice before it's too late. But unfortunately, as you know, we've got our rape gang inquiry ongoing, and it becomes increasingly clear that the Labour government in the past have been able to rely on the Islamic vote, which I think to some extent has helped their cause. But what Labour have got to understand is that vote will migrate to Muslim candidates in the end. It will migrate away from Labour. And as we're already seeing, there are many Islamic independent MPs now in Parliament. I get on very well with most of them. They're very clever and they're very decent people. But at the end of the day, one has to remember that they look at life very differently to the more libertarian culture that we've got used to in this country, and indeed many people have died to protect. So I think we're playing with fire, and we've got to be very careful. As you say, we've dodged a bullet on this occasion, but we've seen these little sort of plumes of lava bubbling up increasingly across the world, and I don't think they're going to stop anytime soon. We saw a pretty vile attack on Bondi Beach, which ultimately has its genesis in this sort of Islamic hatred of in that case the Jews. So I think we've got to wake up, and I don't think Britain, it's become very soft, Johnny, and if we don't fight for what we believe in and what we have spent many generations building up, then we're going to lose it, I'm afraid.
And fighting and dying for as well. But this isn't just about the Jewish community, is it, Rupert? Because, as you say, this affects everyone. Every time there is a terror threat or a terror attack, something dies within our society, and you can physically begin to see it in our cities. And I'm not just talking about population change and even population transfer. I'm talking about slums next to posh houses in streets in formerly nice areas. It is beginning to precipitate into a malaise in the country, which is literally bricks and mortar.
I think there are two interesting questions, I think, which you raise. One is, I've often wondered why it is we don't hear more from the Me Too movement on the way in which Islam approaches, women, which is, in my view, incompatible with a lot of the Me Too movement and what they've been espousing for some time. And the second thing I find extraordinary is that the Muslim elders who have, to some extent, integrated, don't speak up to a far greater extent about this Islamic extremism, which ultimately is the cause of the problem. But I somehow think they're Islamic first, and in the end, they're also worried about upsetting extreme Islam, and therefore they don't speak out. And really, if they had a conscience and if they were being responsible, they would speak out, and they would encourage their communities to stop harboring these people, to stop fostering this hatred and this violence, and hopefully to propagate some form of peaceful coexistence, which is ultimately something which we're all taught in multicultural Britain is the nirvana of the modern multicultural society. So I think there's a lot of questions that don't add up here.
Yes.
And we should be asking them, frankly.
Indeed, appeasement is one of the biggest tragedies that will befall us. For example, Labour MPs who have paper-thin, wafer-thin majorities over the Islamist MP, particularly in places like East London and Birmingham. And Ed Hussein, who is within the Muslim community, basically a heretic, someone who has fought Islamism, and he wrote an article in The Spectator, which has been released in the Christmas edition, and he's writing it from the United States. He's sort of in exile. There are threats to his life. And he said, in Britain, this far-right Islamist movement, and I quote from The Spectator, has had a growing presence even since the 1950s. They've targeted second and third generation Muslims in Britain and left-leaning white students with a popular narrative against capitalism, colonialism and freeing Palestine. The success of this narrative was demonstrated last year when 4 Gazan independents were elected as members of parliament. Their partial union with Corbyn's Your Party shows how the horseshoe theory of politics works, with Islamists aligning with the British far left. But when is Corbyn going to realise that they're going to have his guts for garters as well, Rupert? They're not on the same side.
Well, again, I have a good relationship with Jeremy Corbyn. I don't like his politics and I don't agree with very much that he says, but at least he's honest about putting forward what he genuinely believes in, which I don't think is the case with Keir Starmer. But I think, again, you raise a good question. So why is it that, in Dubai and in Saudi Arabia, the Muslim Brotherhood is effectively banned? And I think they are obviously Islamic countries, and they're far more clued up and very wary of Islamic extremism.
Well, they know it's an existential threat more than we do. They know it's a threat to their kingdoms.
They do, and they want a peaceful country which, and again, look at Dubai. There are many English people moving to Dubai for very good reasons. They're now being overtaxed, over-regulated, and they're being abused by a government which I think has now become their enemy. So a lot of British people are moving all over the world, and I'm afraid it'll be the world that gets the benefit of that, and it'll be Britain that loses its best people and its best brain power. So, look, it's a problem which has to be addressed by whoever's leading the country, and it's not being addressed properly at the moment. And I know for a fact that most of those Islamic countries where Islamic extremism is banned, they can't understand why countries like us are still tolerating terrorists in our midst. And as you said at the beginning of the program, we dodged a bullet there, but there will come a time, and we have not dodged bullets in the past, and we will probably not dodge bullets in the future. So that's not a way in which, as you say, Britain is going to find peace with itself. It's not the way in which we're going to continue our tradition of a high trust society with peaceful coexistence. And, we've all got to wake up to the fact that kind of behavior, as you say, is going to dislodge and damage everything that we hold dear. So there's not much more we can say. It's time for action, not for words.
It's got to be time for action. People don't really understand the subtext to the Ariana Grande disaster, which was that this was a direct attack on the misogyny on young girls and young women, free Western women, dancing and enjoying themselves. And that also needs to be said. It was an intolerance of Western women and their activities to live freely and dance the night away. They don't like that. Len in North Wales has texted us while we've been on air. Len, good evening to you. Why has Bob Villan been let off for his violence inciting speech at Glastonbury, which obviously the BBC transmitted and decided not to pull, whereas Lucy Connolly was imprisoned for a small tweet? It's two-tier justice. I mean, basically that word that that posh bloke from Bob Villan chanted, which I'm not going to repeat, but it's about the Israeli Defence Force, is now parvenu. It's a part of the way that these protests go on, and the cops look at it and move on. Bob Dylan's been let off by Avon and Somerset police. What a crazy last 2 hours we've had.
Well, I've had a Christmas message today from Lucy Connolly. As you probably know, I've tried to help her. I think what happened to her was a disgrace. I think it sums up everything that's wrong. And it was interesting now that the police are suggesting that these non-crime hate incidents are actually not only wasting a lot of their time, but we'd be better off without them.
Yes.
You know, and you see these bizarre situations like this character, Bobby Violin, whoever he is. I hadn't heard of him until.
Well, it's like a play on words of Bob Dylan.
I don't like his music. I thought it was pretty awful. I thought what he said was even worse. And it's quite extraordinary that, you know, the police will enact two-tier justice in that they will let people like him off. I mean, I see clips of Muslim hate preachers saying some vile things. They never seem to get prosecuted. There does seem to be one rule for what I call the indigenous English Christians who quite rightly are concerned about their country. And these other people who spew vileness on a regular basis. So I don't understand it. As you know, I was on the receiving end of it from Reform, who tried to politically assassinate me. And I was basically two false statements, witness statements were made about me, which the police have yet to share with me. I mean, in Britain, you're supposed to know what you're accused of, but I didn't actually see those statements. I was accused of having early onset dementia, and it seems that we live in a country now where the law has been trivialized and it's being enacted or it's being implemented in a way which is not totally even-handed. So, and I think this situation is another example of it. And you know, the BBC they weren't held to account for allowing this to be broadcast. They must have known more or less what was coming.
Yeah.
So look, I think most of the problems come from the left now. I don't think the majority of Britain is right-wing. It's tarred as being right-wing because the majority of the establishment has gone so far left. I think the majority of us are just decent, logical, common-sense people who want to see common sense continue. When I was being brought up, Britain made sense. And right now, it doesn't make a lot of sense anywhere.
Yes.
So somehow we've got to, as I say, wake up and you know, get rid of the people who are creating the problems and start to restore some sort of order. That's why I've set up a movement called Restore Britain, because we do need some form of restoration.
It's also a very tolerant nation, and it has created a multi-ethnic, not diversity and all those other buzzwords, but a respectable kind of community of different people. The post-war consensus that my grandparents moved into was a place of miracles compared to the Nazi Austria which they fled. But I do want to pick you up on something because we've never spoken before, and I want to separate the discussion between halal meat and kosher meat, because though they might have technically similar ways of non-stunning and slaughter, if you ban kosher meat, it will mean the erasure, the general kind of movement of Jews out of Britain, whereas it won't affect the Islamic community. Can you not separate the obvious differences between what halal and kosher would mean in terms of unintended consequences? If you banned kosher meat in this country, the Jews would leave pretty quickly.
Well, I don't think we're talking about banning kosher meat. I think we're talking about banning kosher and halal slaughter. And the two, in my view, are incompatible with this nonsense that's being spewed. I mean, I love animals. I want to see them, if they're going to be killed humanely. And, you know, our abattoirs are more highly regulated very often than the halal and the kosher slaughterhouses. So,
well, I'm not sure about that. I think kosher is something I know about, but halal is not something.
Kosher is not that different from halal, to be frank. And
well, it is. I mean, it's fundamentally different. It's
it is
fundamentally
different, but there is no stun at all in halal slaughter.
No, in kosher meat, what you're allowed to do,
there's no stun in kosher either.
That's right. The animal has to be completely healthy before its throat is cut, for want of a better phrase. I know where it's sort of people having their dinner, apologies for that. But the consequence of this, Rupert, is that the Jewish communities would regard this, as they have done over many, many centuries, as a moment of intolerance, and the place has gone cold. We'd better, move our things out of here. And so when you talk about these things, maybe from a Muslim community thing, that's a different matter. But the tangible effect on the Jewish community is that we'd have to leave. And I'm not sure you don't want that, do you?
Agree.
You don't want that, do you?
You could import halal meat, and you can import kosher meat. Doesn't mean doesn't have to be slaughtered here.
But what's the difference then? What's the difference?
Very often, if you want to eat it, it can be imported. I mean, we have our own laws and rules and regulations pertaining to our abattoirs, and our animals are actually stunned with a high voltage which kills them, and that goes for poultry as well. That is not the case with halal, and it's not the case with kosher. So I gave a speech in Westminster Hall, and I think if you're going to apply, animal rights, and we've just had this recent, as you probably know, wave of Lib Dems and Greens talking about animal welfare. But I notice, and you've probably seen me on social media, challenging them. Well, why aren't you saying something about halal and kosher slaughter? You seem quite happy to let that happen. So I think you and I have an intellectual difference. I'm not saying it can't be consumed here. What we're saying is that we have our regulations and we have our abattoirs. They are very highly regulated. We respect the fact that we don't want the animals to suffer in any way. And when they're slaughtered properly in the way that our abattoirs do it, they don't suffer that. Now, with halal, they have a sort of minor stun, which I think is just an excuse to say they're stunned. Very often that gives the animal an epileptic fit. And I think you can't ban one, Johnny, without banning both.
Well, that's the fundamental difference. There's no stunning with kosher, but what it does do, what you're doing here is imbibing, 20th and 21st century progressive practices on slaughter, which didn't exist in biblical times. And so these are the unintended consequences of following this concept. And I'm just telling you that though you might be able to import food from France or Belgium, although Belgium are at it as well in terms of banning, Switzerland also banned kosher meat. You can import it through the borders, etc. This creates a chill in terms of what the Jewish community feel about their host country. That's what I really want to say to you about this. And though I respect...
Well, I don't think this is in any way relevant to either Islam or the Jewish population. I think this is about animal welfare. And I've seen videos of both kosher and halal slaughter, and I personally don't like it. So I'm speaking out and saying we have our laws, our regulations, and our slaughterhouses. You have a vet on site. The animals are actually stunned and killed properly before they're actually then butchered, and they feel no pain. Now, that isn't the case when I'm God forbid that anyone should cut your throat, but I think you'd agree you wouldn't necessarily like to die as a live sentient being.
This is actually an argument for vegetarianism and veganism, actually. This is sort of going into something else. I mean, I don't like any of it that I've seen. I don't like even stunning. I don't like killing meat, and yet I sort of turn a blind eye to it because I've eaten meat all my life. But again, if I really thought about it, I would be a vegetarian. This is what this discussion has become.
Again, I think I'm right in saying there's been an increasing amount of both halal and kosher slaughter here over the recent past. And in the past, it used to be imported, a lot of it, from Europe, and particularly from sort of, places like Strasbourg and other parts of Europe, where you do actually get a lot of sort of, special kosher shops. I've actually been to a lot of them myself. And look, it's not in any way anti any particular body of people. It's about animal welfare for me. And I think we've built up our abattoirs and our codes of slaughter to be as kind as possible to the animal. As you say, if you really object to any animal being killed at all, then by all means go vegan or go veggie. But I think most people actually do like to eat meat. Man has always, I think, over his evolution, eaten meat. He does eat berries and he eats sort of vegetables as well when they're in season, but he's always been also a carnivore too. So I think it's up to each individual conscience, but I don't think it means people can't eat either halal or kosher. It's just about whether it's right to have it slaughtered here. I think that's my view. And I'm pretty active on it on social media, as you've probably seen.
Rupert Lowe, MP, honestly held opinions. Thank you very much. Is Southampton going to go up this season?
Well, it doesn't look like it at the moment, does it?
Not at the moment, but I'm wishing you the best of luck, and I'm sure you'll wish my team, Aston Villa, all the very best while we're at it.
Well, you're doing very well. You could challenge for the title.
Oh,
here.
man, it's music to my ears. Thank you very much indeed. That's Rupert Lowe, MP. He's the independent and leader of Restore Britain. Rupert, thank you very much indeed. We had a long discussion about halal and kosher. I'm trying to separate the concepts here because we know the dynamics, the difference between the Muslim religion and the Jewish religion. The Jews are a tiny minority in this country. If you didn't know, there's only, 250,000 Jews in the country, and there are millions of Muslims living in concentrated areas in, the cities that exists in London and Birmingham and Leicester and Bradford and Manchester and various other the places as well. But it's just a case of when Jewish people hear that the country is not allowing kosher meat to be slaughtered in their country, then it becomes an inclement, hostile place. It seems to be what happens throughout Jewish history. And I wondered what you thought about that, the unintended consequences of animal rights. 03444991000. Phil in Portsmouth says, "Hi, Johnny. If they can ban boiling lobsters, then they can ban halal and kosher. Simple," that's what he says. And Richard from Ayrshire, good evening to you. I agree with Rupert. These slaughter methods need outlawing, both halal and kosher. Don't like it. Move elsewhere. We are a Christian country. And that's a shame because, this is a Christian country and there are millions of people who are not Christian who are willing and able and happy to be part of the consensus of this country. When in Rome, do as Romans do. But I'm sure, Richard, your version of being a tolerant Christian country doesn't mean kicking people out who don't agree with you. So that's the kind of problem with these discussions. It precipitates an anti-British notion of freedom, and that is my problem. And that's kind of, Richard, it's helpful that you tweeted that or texted us, because that is my goat with this one. A halal goat, a kosher goat, or indeed a normally stunned goat. God. 03444991000. Let's take a break.
every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
Such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, have taken that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say. So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically.
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's 29 minutes to 7. Listen, English councils are warning against adopting this 4-day week. Local Government Secretary Steve Reed has written to all council leaders in England, warning them not to introduce this 4/5 of a week thing. As reported by The Telegraph, the letter is understood to say that council staff undertaking part-time work for full-time pay without compelling justification would be considered an indicator among a wide range of factors of potential failure. That is the warning from central government. 4-day week councils, what about it? Let's talk to Councillor George Madrick. He's leader of Reform UK's Portsmouth Group. Welcome to the show, George. The Alf Garnets of this world have been at this for quite some time. They do not like the cut of the council's jibs, sort of pretending to work 10 hours a day, 4 days a week, as opposed to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's not right, is it?
No, and you know, council services don't stop at on Fridays, you know, or weekends. It's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week kind of job, and you know, the issue is with retention of staff. That's where we're struggling right now in the civic service, especially in councils, is the retention of staff. A lot of them are going off to the private sector where there is more flexible working arrangements, and that's the problem we have. But at no circumstance should we go down to a 4-day week, in my opinion.
I tell you what, when you come across a council worker, the only thing I'm jealous about when they work for the council is this incredible gold standard of job security. I think people who quit the council should think twice about going into the private sector, because there's an absolute jungle out here.
Yeah, I mean, you can get away with blue murder almost, can't you? In the civil servants. I mean, the threshold to get yourself fired is ridiculous. I mean, we've known some absolute howlers amongst officers in our council, and they managed to retain their positions. You are right. They have a gold standard of protection and an absolute ring around them. So yeah, you know, there is that for sure, but. You know, since the COVID pandemic, the way of working has completely changed. I mean, at our council, we do offer to some staff, depending on their arrangements, we do offer flexible working in the sense of from home a couple of days a week and so on and so forth. But I feel really uncomfortable about paying people for 5 days but only requesting 4 days of work out of them, because the suggestion that's been put forward is not that you put your 40 hours into 4 days, is that you simply work 32 hours over the 4 days instead, but retain the pay of the 40 hours, and that's not right.
It isn't right, is it? It's like a pay rise of whatever 40 over 32 times 100 is, which I'm sure absolutely. Mark will tell me. He's chuckling away there. He'll know, he'll find out. Anyway, but listen, of course, it was the Lib Dems that introduced this first of all. South Cambridgeshire District Council, led by the Lib Dems, became the first to make a permanent move to the 4-day week in July after it began trialling a shorter working week a couple of years ago. But Steve Reed said there'd been a decline in performance in the council's housing services, and he asked how the local authority would mitigate this. So will they be the first and maybe one of the last to implement this, or will you think there'll be a turf war between local and national governments?
Well, I do hope it'll be the last, but there's been a lot of councils for a lot of years now suggesting such. We've had it even down here as well. You know, there's a constant suggestion of whether the 4-day working week is more productive than the 5-day working week. But as I say, the big issue with doing this is number one, the retention of staff, but number two, the service that we're offering. We charge taxpayers a rate every single month through council tax, and for that they expect a certain level of service. And if you're reducing staff hours, then by default you are also reducing the quality or time or access to the service that they're paying for. And that is where we also have a problem. We've noticed it with the reduction of hours or opening hours of service desks across the country as well, and it's not a preferential rate. So on this one occasion, I do support the government's call to not implement this 4-day working week countrywide.
Councillor George Madgwick, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this vital point. Remember, if you are in a council house and there's a leak in your roof, and it happens on a Friday morning, you have to wait till 9 a.m. on Monday morning to fix it, even if it's raining. And if not, just go down to the golf course on the Friday morning where you'll find your local councillor and interrupt his golf. Right, Jonny here on Talk. We're going to talk about this in just a moment. Non-crime hate to be scrapped. I feel those of you on Twitter and on Facebook who've written something a bit saucy, a bit tasty on politics might be breathing a sigh of relief. We'll talk to Harry Miller, a former police officer and founder of Fair Cop, right after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome along. Merry Christmas. Not yet, but you know what I mean. Have you noticed how everyone celebrates Christmas before it begins? Then there's Christmas, and then they forget about it. On Boxing Day, they go off to the sales, but Christmas goes on till January the 6th, doesn't it? There's 12 days of Christmas. Your true love sent to you. All those things. Maybe that's when Christmas should continue well into your first week back into the new year. 0344 499 1000. Now, non-crime hate incidents. Okay, even the Orwellian sound of it makes it sound ridiculous. And the good news is they're pulling them. And that's right, isn't it? Police leaders are set to recommend scrapping them next month in a review to be published. The College of Policing chair Lord Herbert told the BBC that a sensible new approach focused only on the most serious incidents would rebalance the system for the social media age. You know, we're going to look back at this era where social media was out of control, when our kids are grown up and they've dealt with social media and they know about this new world that operates in it, when corporatism takes over social media so that the little guys tweeting won't have as much attention and as much ability to syndicate, because that's kind of what's happening already. The corporatists are beginning to colonize huge parts of social media. If you look at podcasting, the biggest audiences are now delivered in very, very big clumps of audience revenue. Anyway, I think this will go away. So that knock on the door that you had because you tweeted something a bit spicy may calm down in the new year. So let's talk to Harry Miller, who's the former police officer and founder of Fair Cop. It's a very, very important point. Good evening to you, Harry. This idea of freedom of speech in the country is being violated when you have two cops turn up on your door because something you tweeted and then deleted is the subject of potential arrest.
Yeah, the whole nonsense about non-crime hate incidents, it needed putting in the bin many, many years ago. Now, I know many people are celebrating the fact that Lord Herbert and the College of Policing have finally put their hands in the air and said, you know what, non-crime hate incidents are a nonsense, they're a really bad idea. What I can't understand is why they didn't do that years ago. Back in 2021, we got a Court of Appeal ruling that said precisely that said non-crime hate incidents, except in the most extreme circumstances, were unlawful. They were a breach of Article 8. They were an assault on free speech. But of course, the College of Policing has taken years and years and years and years and years to catch up. Okay. And now, why did they do that? They did it because it was easy. It was a way of bypassing the criminal justice system. It was a way of bypassing good old-fashioned policing. It left you in a situation where a person could end up with a non-crime hate incident purely on the basis that someone had been offended and made an accusation. It's a modern-day version of the witch trials, and it's had real-world consequences. If you found yourself on the naughty list, you weren't just on the naughty list at Christmas. You were on the naughty list for 7 years. I mean, that's 7 years where if you applied for a job, particularly working with children or vulnerable people, then the chief constable would reveal to that potential employer that you were on the naughty list. You had a non-crime hate incident against your name. And what was that like to do to your job prospects?
Absolutely.
Well, I'll tell you, it puts you in the rejection bin. And so, of course, we're delighted that eventually the College of Policing have said, we're going to can these. The next thing that Lord Herbert and the College of Policing need to do, they need to can themselves, because they are one of the worst quangos, one of the worst setups this country has. They waste tens of millions of pounds a year doing absolutely nothing. The College of Policing is populated by people who want to be police officers but simply weren't good enough. And so they went into this quasi-management system. So I think what needs to happen for the good of the country is that the College of Policing is itself shut down by this time next year. Then we can all have a very celebratory Christmas.
I hope so. That's next year, isn't it? Now, listen, there have been two cause célèbres recently, haven't there? Of course, Lucy Connolly is the biggest one, sentenced to 31 months for something that incited violence, and then she thought, oh, blimey, that looks terrible, I better cancel that. And she did. She deleted it, but she still went down for an incredibly large amount of time and was released later. And then, of course, from our sister station, Maxie Allen, I think this is perhaps just as bad, maybe even worse. He was part of a WhatsApp group, and him and his wife tweeted something in the WhatsApp group amongst an individual group of people, and for that, he got a visit from 5 or 6 cops to his front door. This is just outrageous.
It is absolutely outrageous. Now, with the Lucy Connolly thing, that wasn't a non-crime hate incident. That was, as far as the courts were concerned, an incitement to crime. I think it perhaps was an incitement to crime, although the sentencing was completely unjust.
Although she did delete it, didn't she?
Absolutely. There should have been maybe a visit and a slap on the wrist, and that should have been it. But when it comes to what you say in a private WhatsApp group, then the police should have no business whatsoever going after you for that, because it's a private conversation. The fact that it happens online doesn't mean that it's no less private. It is private. It's a version of having a conversation in your living room. And the state and the police should have nothing to do with it, unless, of course, you're plotting a terrorist act. If you're plotting to, rob a bank, then it transcends rights of privacy, because if you're conspiring to commit a crime, then of course the police should have an interest in what you're saying. But if you're simply expressing a view, if you're expressing an opinion, if your opinion happens to be offensive, so what? So what? This is not within the purview of the state, and the police and the government should have no right whatsoever to check on your thinking, check on your speaking, interrogate you, put you on a naughty list, any of that. We should be free to say offensive things one to another, certainly in private.
And then again, when someone like Bob Villan comes out and trumpets his hate speech on national television, which then gets clipped up and put onto international social media, and then the cops say that they're going to get away with it. He's concluded, the head of the Avon and Somerset Police, they've concluded that no further action will be taken after this posh bloke from Bob Villan said, death, death to the IDF, which is Israel's army. Another comments made during the band's performance at Glastonbury and then broadcast via a live stream on BBC iPlayer. What do you make of that? I mean, that is incitement to violence, isn't it?
Absolutely, that is literal hate speech. That is literal incitement to violence. When you say globalize the intifada, we all know what that means. It means takes the atrocity of October the 7th and spread it across the world. That's what that means. So that is hate speech, and that is criminal hate speech. And of course, the police should have a real interest in that. But that is a world away from somebody like myself who said that a man cannot become a woman. That's a world away from that. It's a world away from saying, you know what, I think we need to be a little bit cautious about Islam, or we ought to be a little bit cautious about the number of illegal immigrants who are coming into the country, all of which, of course, would have got you a non-crime hate incident. The police are far more interested in that than they are in genuine incitement to violence. Bob Villan calling for death to the IDF, that is incitement to violence. As far as I'm concerned, the police should be not only knocking on his door, they should be dragging him away, putting him in a cell and questioning him. That's what should happen if the police were doing their job. But of course, anti-Semitism, that's one of the luxury hates that in this country at the moment you seem to be able to get away with. It's at the very least it's given a pass.
Harry Miller, thank you very much indeed. I was as outraged as you are. I went to a protest against Bob Villan when he played at the Kentish Town Forum in London, and it was a very noisy, very happy protest against Bob Villan, and the Palestinian crew across the street were kept apart. There were still 2 arrests made of people, perhaps under mistaken identity, but that did happen. Listen, Harry, thank you very much indeed for joining us and declaring what a lot of people are thinking tonight. Michael Anstey has WhatsApped us. If a white British singer had chanted death, death to the Muslim Brotherhood, I wonder what the result would be, despite them being banned in numerous Islamic countries. When the boot's on the other foot, can we say that is two-tier policing? Thank you, Michael, for your contribution. 0344 499 1000. Peace talks continue, allegedly, between the Ukrainians and the Russians, sponsored by the Americans, looked at from the European Union, and yet, under the cloak of peace talks, the war rages on through the winter. Is it exacerbating the violence? What is going on in the Ukraine-Russia war? As long as I've been on Talk and this war has continued, I've wanted to include it in our shows because this vital Ukraine-Russia war may affect us all in the long run. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk to British volunteer fighter Mason Gifford after this.
Every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, have taken that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say. So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically.
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
We'll talk about the farmers later on in the show because the government has relented on the levy threshold from £1 million to £2.5 million. I think everyone's very happy about that, and the farmers and protests will listen to. Now, this is something that really worries me, and maybe it should worry you too, because at least there is jaw going on, even if there's war intensifying. These so-called Ukraine peace talks, US and Ukraine call in Miami, they'd say that the talks have been productive despite no breakthrough. But the Russians are launching major deadly missile and drone attacks on Ukraine. Let's face it, drone attacks is a new and very potent kind of warfare. It's precise. The cameras are HD or OLED or 4K, whatever the term you can, and you can see some very, very nasty, very targeted attacks on individual soldiers, on buildings that come from these drones. And the war is intensifying. Innocent people are being killed day by day, not to mention thousands of Ukrainian soldiers. And for some reason, the Russians don't seem to care about the amount of people that they bring to the slaughter of their own men as well. I've never understood that, but that was what Russia's always been about, hasn't it, even in the Second World War. So let's talk to Mesa Gifford. He's the former British volunteer fighter in Ukraine, and he's the author of Fighting Evil. Welcome to the show, Mesa.
Hi there.
Mesa, I guess, like me, you are pessimistic about the outcome of peace talks.
Well, I am, primarily because this 28-point peace plan has been drawn up by the Russians, and their sense of reality is completely coloured by the fact that Donald Trump is sparing the sort of carrot and stick approach with Russia and instead focusing on the stick approach towards Ukraine. All the pressure is completely one-sided on the Ukrainians to compromise, to cede land to the Russians. And the Russians now have decided to quite literally try and inflict on Ukraine not a peace plan, but essentially a surrender document. The initial document included a huge amount of land lost to the Russians. It included limitations on their army. It was sort of the Treaty of Versailles rehashed. And Donald Trump, so obsessed with getting a Nobel Peace Prize for himself, that he's just tried to get a peace done as quickly as possible. It's not the art of the deal, it's the art of the bodge job, and I'm worried about the future.
We can't have this, Mesa, because obviously the wrong kind of peace deal, and you've touched on the idea of it being a surrender deal, will precipitate future aggression from Russia either towards Ukraine or indeed other neighbours like Finland, Sweden, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, less so Poland because they have the biggest military in Europe and they are tough guys. Maybe even Moldova, which they could take over in a New York minute. This would not stop the aggression of Russia, would it?
Not at all. I mean, it gets worse because not only are countries like Moldova under threat, Transnistria is a disputed region of Moldova. There's a lot of evidence that had Putin taken Ukraine, he would have continued on into Moldova. And Moldova is not in NATO, it's not even in the EU.
That's right.
The Baltic countries, sandwiched between Kaliningrad, Belarus and Russia, are incredibly vulnerable to Russian attacks. But more recently, people have been talking quite seriously about Kazakhstan. about the the Asia region. There's many other countries around the world that Russia has border disputes with. This war really is a return to the age of imperialism, where big powers can dominate smaller ones. And the real challenge now for us as Brits is that Donald Trump, the president of the United States, one of our greatest ally, quite literally, is seemingly sort of going along with this Russian and Chinese idea of great power. Just today, we were talking about, Trump was talking about Greenland again and how it should be part of America. He's threatened both all of his allies, reserving his ire for the people closest to America and not for China and Russia. And what's scary is that we're seemingly returning to the great power dynamics of the First World War, when great powers dominated around the world, and conflict was a result of that. So it's a more chaotic world that we're going into.
And I think Ukrainians understand this clearly. If you look at the dynamic of Austria, for example, which was absolutely eviscerated of its power and its empire, so to speak, its link with Hungary 100 years ago, there's not many headlines that come out of Austria anymore, because essentially it's a small Teutonic-speaking country which was eviscerated by peace treaties. And that could happen to Ukraine. They have fought a very hardy and determined war for nearly 3 years. And this 28-point peace deal, correct me if I'm wrong, includes ceding land to Russia, which they have yet to win, or Ukraine have taken back with the loss of many lives.
It's madness. I actually fought in Kramatorsk. One of the cities that's under threat is Kramatorsk. Just to give you a quick briefing, I was in the 131st Separate Reconnaissance Battalion. I fought primarily in the south, in and around a place called Kherson. In fact, I was one of the first units to take the city back, or was with them. I was then, during the summer offensive, when the Russians began counterattacking in a place called Liman. I was sent with my battalion up to the forests of Liman, but I was based in Kramatorsk. That's where my base was. Now, Kramatorsk is part of a stronghold, a line of fortifications that's been built up since 2014, when Russia first began its attacks on Ukraine. And Russia, over the last couple of years, has completely failed. They figured out, so they said recently, as an amusing, I think it was NATO that pointed this out, that Russia had a snail started 2 years ago, it would have advanced further than the Russian army has in the last few years. And Kramatorsk is part of a network of fortified cities that if we were just to give it to Russia, the trouble is there is very little that stands between those cities and Kyiv and the river, the Dnipro River. A huge amount more land could be taken. Now, Vladimir Putin, he has never stuck to any peace deal or any agreement he's ever made in his entire life. Russia is currently rearming at a staggering pace. And at the moment in Britain, we still haven't fully committed to rearming ourselves after decades, quite literally, of underfunding our own armed forces. Just today, I think was it Leonardo, the Italian helicopter manufacturer, is threatening of completely pulling out of the UK some of its manufacturing and building instead in Italy, because we're just not investing enough, despite the fact that Russia has invaded Ukraine. It's on our doorstep. The world's becoming more chaotic. We know we need to invest in our military, and we're not doing anything. It's the definition of madness. We are piling up problems for the future that will be a hell of a lot more expensive to fix the problem rather than dealing with them now.
A warning there from Mesa Gifford, a former British volunteer fighter on the front line in Ukraine and author of Fighting Evil. Thank you very much indeed for joining us with that sober update on the Ukraine-Russia war and the peace. What peace deals could there be going on in Miami? 0344 499 1000. Hi, Johnny, says Dave. I have no problems with halal or kosher meats. I'll eat either. I actually do eat a lot of halal simply because it's cheaper and a lot fresher in the supermarkets. On an aside, the Pascal Robinson decision. This is Bob Villan. It's disgraceful. Great show as ever. Merry Christmas to all of you here at Talk, and more action after a short break for the news. Stay tuned to Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
What a fantastic first hour we've had here on Talk. Good evening, my name is Jonny Gould, and I'm here till 10 o'clock. And then, watch out, it's Duncan Barks. He'll be there from 10 o'clock right here on Talk as we continue the debate. There's absolutely no abatement in the seriousness and depth of the news. And actually, we've got a bit of good news, I think, now. We're going to take a break from all the kind of anxieties of potential war on our doorstep to the attacks from Islamists in our country to say that there has been a significant easing on tax for our farmers. Where's the... I'm going to just... Would you just bear with me? Bear with. Basically, the government has decided to relent on the 1 million threshold and go for £2.5 million, OK? So that is better news. I'll just read that more clearly for you. Keir Starmer has decided to back down on inheritance tax raids on farmers after a real backlash. I mean, if you live in London, you'll have seen the farmers come down your main road with their combine harvesters, go right to the centre of Westminster. The government was going to raise the threshold or reduce it to £1 million, but now they've relented and it will now be at £2.5 million following big protests. It's been welcomed by the National Farmers Union. It's been welcomed by the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch. Is it enough? Let's find out from a farmer himself of cows and goats. He's been on the show before. As always, Merry Christmas to farmer and agri-tech entrepreneur James Wright. Welcome, James.
Hello. How are we doing? Merry Christmas.
Nice to see you. Merry Christmas. Nice to see you again. £2.5 million from £1 million. Is that enough? Are you happy with that? Everyone seems to be pleased.
Well, look, it's a start. We've gone from £1 million per member of the family, so a husband and a wife. So they get £1 million each to 2.5 million. And that will mean the vast majority of small family farms, which is what we wanted, will be protected. So I came on, talked to you a week ago about what we wanted from Rachel Reeves. And actually, this was the one thing that we did want. You know, a nice surprise underneath the tree for farmers up and down the country.
So is £2.5 million enough? When you take about the start, when you say it's a start, what else do you want?
Well, look, I don't think we should have inheritance tax at all, particularly for businesses and farms, because ultimately what you've got to do in order to pay that tax is sell part of the farm or sell part of the business. So if you're a brewery, you've got to sell a still, or if you're a farm, you've got to sell some of your cows, your tractor, your combine in order to pay that. And all we're doing is reducing the productive capacity of this country. It's farmers and businesses that create the jobs and the food that we all need. So really the best thing to do is we didn't have this in the first place. This was an unnecessary battle over the last 15 months that Labour decided to pick with the countryside. So whilst they've ended up at the right decision, it would have been nice if we didn't have to have this battle at all. You know, we've been... I'm not a man who goes protesting, and I've been to Whitehall 3 times to go and protest against this, and many farmers will be the same.
James, you came down my street honking your horns with your yellow vans and your yellow trucks, and I went out and cheered you on. I did. And I think it's absolutely right, because it is a form of shooting oneself in the foot if we don't look after the bread basket or the meat basket or whatever basket you're providing of dairy and cheese. Well, it's bad, isn't it? It's common sense.
Exactly. I mean, food security is national security, and yes, any country that can't feed itself is no country at all. So we thank you for your support, and the public have really got behind this campaign. And this never would have happened if Labour had not seen the outpouring of support from the public for our farmers, and it's been hugely appreciated. I'm sure they thought that this would go away. I'm sure they thought after the first protest that that'd be it from the farmers, but actually we've been up there and all over the country meeting with the public and spreading the news that food security is national security. Without family farms, there is no food security. You know, family farms are what represent the majority of agriculture in this country. And when farms like mine were going to have to be sold to pay the tax, I'm a tenant, my landlord would have sold the farm. It would have meant that a rewilding charity or a corporation would have bought the farm, not another family. And so what Labour have done with this news is, for many farmers, given some respite. And if I'm honest, Johnny, I had a message a couple of days ago from a farmer not in Devon, not that far away from me, who said that he was considering doing the unthinkable to avoid paying the tax. Now, I've spoken to him this afternoon, and this news will give him respite. And that will be for the same for a lot of farmers up and down the country. So this is welcome news, but it is a battle we didn't have to have in the first place.
Indeed. So if you're a tenant, what kind of security do you have with your landlord? It's a precarious situation, isn't it? I mean, you know, if you are a domestic tenant, you have some rights. They've improved or increased, haven't they, under the current government? But what happens if your landlord serves notice? Can they? Is it a long-term lease? It's a commercial lease of some kind. It's not the same as one that you have on your flat in Tooting, is it? It's not the same.
No, not at all. So we have what's called a farm business tenancy,
yes.
And they are a pretty standard instruments, and ours is for 3 years, which we're about halfway through, but the average in the UK is only about 3 years. So the average, about 30% of all the land in this country is rented, and the average farmer only does that for 3 years. Now, we're lucky we also own our own home and own a bit of land as well, but without these barns that I'm standing in, without the land that surrounds them, we wouldn't have a productive business. And one of the things that I think the government hadn't realised is that this would really impact tenant farmers. The rent that I will pay over the next 10 years would have been less than the inheritance tax liability that my landlord had. And the simple advice to him would have been to sell. So I am personally glad this benefits us, because hopefully we'll be here for at least another couple of years.
Because, James, the government here, they're townies, aren't they? They don't understand. I mean, seriously, there's a massive gulf, isn't there, between these metropolitan sorts, aren't they, with all their din-dins in Italian restaurants, going out on the town. They don't understand yous lot, do they?
No, I mean, look, if I want to get to London, it's 2.5 hours by train, and I can't blame the fact that civil servants and Labour MPs don't want to come up to Exmoor, but it does mean there is a disconnect. Look, I don't know how the London Underground works. I don't know how, so I would never pretend to tell someone how to run that. But at the same time, why are civil servants or Labour MPs who've never been to the countryside telling me how to run my business? And I think they've realised that actually farmers, we know a thing or two about managing media, and we know a thing or two about getting our message across, and it's been a great effort across the industry to get to this point today. Literally everyone from Tom Bradshaw, president of the NFU, right down to individual family farms, everyone has been united on this message, and we've got a powerful result just before Christmas.
I'm really delighted for you. James, I have a sympathy with farmers, not least because I lived 3 miles from my city centre, but I'm not joking here. When I was a child, it was slightly rural, and now it's very much inside Birmingham. And I'm not joking here. There was a farm on our street of houses, which obviously predated the 20th century. Eventually, the farmer sold the land, and there are 50-year-old houses there on that side. And my mate Mark, who ended up as a butcher and then as a taxi driver, because he is the evolution of that person. He came from a farm to our primary school, and I swear he didn't live that far out of the city centre. So I have seen this for myself, that this class of people who ran our societies are divorced from understanding the concept of where their food from. They think it all comes in a polythene bag from Asda, Sainsbury's, Tesco, you name it, Lidl. It's complicated stuff, man. They should go and have a look at a farm. When I was in primary school, we went to a farm when I was 4. Some of the things I saw were a bit of a shock to me, being from Moseley, being from Harborne. I saw my mate put her whole arm inside a cow's mouth and other stuff that you just never see. They need to understand that we're all part of one holistic society. We need each other.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, food does come in polythene bags, but before it gets there, it's probably been through a farm. We produce about 60% of the food that we all eat, but we are self-sufficient on dairy, beef, wheat, things like this that we all need every single day. And it's great that there are lots of initiatives to get children out on farms. FaceTime a Farmer is a great example of where farmers FaceTime into primary school classrooms. There are lots of things that we can do, but we need to do more. And that responsibility also lies with the farmers as well. We need to make our farms more accessible to let more people come in and see things like behind me, my cows all in their shed having their winter ration, their evening dinner.
It's that time of day.
It is that time of day, yes, definitely. I mean, I've had a whiskey today to celebrate a thing, which is a rarity.
Nice.
We're almost at Christmas, so the cows are having the same.
Congratulations. Well done on your composure in this interview as well, considering you're down a few whiskies. So obviously this came from somewhere, James. I mean, it wasn't just the out-and-out protests that have been trumpeted here on Talk and obviously very visibly on the streets. Who was in there at number 10 amongst your crew that helped make this happen? There must be some very persuasive voices. Were you part of that?
No, so I think the pressure really has come from Parliament as well. So
right.
Kemi Badenoch and the Conservatives have relentlessly used parliamentary opposition days to make sure that there is constantly having votes over the last year, pushing Labour MPs to break the whip. And we had one, Marcus, Labour MP, broke with the whip and was suspended. And that pressure has built up. And then Tim Shipman at The Spectator was reporting today that Tom Bradshaw, the president of the National Farmers Union, and Keir Starmer met last week. And Tom and Keir came to this arrangement. So
right.
This apparently has been on the books for the last week. But it is no doubt that pressure in Parliament is eventually what brought the government to heel. And you've been to Westminster, you know how disruptive it is when the farmers turn up. And I think those two things together, and the fact that Tom probably gave Keir probably a pretty easy way out, a step down from all of this, they can save a bit of face.
And it's a considerable amount for wealthy farm owners and people who've had farms within the family. The one criticism at the time was that it was a tax dodge for certain people that were buying farms to offload tax so that their other businesses wouldn't do their stuff. I mean, is there any sort of guarding against that, which obviously would impact on your industry, that people were using this as a tax dodge?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, and that's the problem in many ways, is there are many people who buy farmland to avoid inheritance tax. But the average farm is about 160 acres. It's worth about 2.2 million pounds, and that's owned by families. So that the way the tax was, it was perennially hurting family farms. Now, a family farm never wants to sell that land. So, the fact that we were taxing the wealth transfer between generations when they never wanted to actually realise that cash was going to hurt a lot of family farms. There are things we can do and should be doing to stop those land speculators. But one of the problems is, once you get to a certain level of wealth, your tax advisors are much better than HMRC civil servants, and they're able to work their way around any loopholes. So I think it is a joined up approach with lots of people working together. But the good news today is that if you are an average family farmer, you are probably now going to avoid that tax, which is good news and welcome just before Christmas. But there's still more to do.
There's still more to do, but I tell you what, James, right, it is an absolute delight to have you on with this very good news. So near Christmas, I want to wish you, your family, your goats and your cows, and the whole of the industry in Exmoor and beyond a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and keep supplying us with great dairy and meat products.
Thank you for your support, Johnny. Couldn't do it without you.
Oh, thank you, James. I mean, I really mean that. I mean, I came out I saw them out my kitchen window. This array of yellow JCBs going down the street, honk, honk if you support them. And I gave them a good fist like that, like come on the villa kind of fist, because I really mean it. Well done to James Wright and the gang. James is a farmer of goats and cows from Exmoor, and very, very good news indeed. Julia in Cheshire has texted us. Great to have you on Talk again. Thank you, Julia. It's nice to be here. I don't have a problem with either kosher or halal meat as long as it is well labelled. I can then make my mind up, she says, as to whether or not I want to eat it. I object to these methods of slaughter being hidden. As far as I'm aware, kosher meat is never hidden. It isn't. And I'm never expected to eat it. You're not. It's meant for the Jewish community. It's not there to be syndicated out to everyone. It is just for the benefit of people who wish to keep kosher meat. By the way, it is a bit more expensive because of that. I lived in Golders Green in London when I first left home some 50 years ago. My abiding memory is how Mrs. Pearlman, my landlady, was, and how wonderful Grudzinski's bakeries were. I truly hope that England never loses its Jewish community. That's very kind, Julia. Happy Christmas to you. You're right. Grudzinski bakeries, not many of them around anymore. They were delicious, absolutely brilliant. Lovely. 0344 499 1000. Crowborough's got a bit of a problem, hasn't it? We'll talk about the influx of potential migrants to that lovely West Sussex town right after this. Stay tuned.
Every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
Such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, are taking that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say. So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically.
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And I know how important Christmas time is here at Talk, and it's a difficult time of year, not least because it's a break from your normal routine. So whatever you used to do on 2 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, on the 19th of November, the 19th of October, the 19th of September is very different at this time of the year where people are away from work. You know, you haven't really got your things to do in the normal way. So I hope that we're a friend during Christmas and that we're never too far away if you're on your own or if family aren't nearby or if your neighbours haven't checked in on you and all that kind of thing. Going out and it's a bit lonely. Remember, we're here for you. I'm here for you. I've got Christmas Day breakfast shows coming up, which I'm absolutely thrilled about, on the 26th and the 27th, and I look forward to being with you. I'm back in again tomorrow at 4 o'clock, so stay tuned to Talk. Duncan Barks will be in after 10 o'clock, and Nick Dubois in at lunchtime tomorrow. So it's going to be a really, really good set of shows as well. I hope you enjoy them here for us. 0344 499 1000. Now, this Crowborough thing is very worrying because this sort of thing could start happening in a town near you, or maybe even your town, because the first asylum seekers due at a Sussex barracks in Crowborough in weeks, they're coming as the council joins legal action against the Home Office. Crowborough's military base is understood to be being prepared for 540 male migrants to arrive in the new year as part of the government's bid to reduce the use of asylum hotels. So rather than actually solve the problem, rather than moving them out of your assorted Holiday Inn Expresses or Premier Inns or wherever they've dumped them under those big contracts, they're going to lob them into military bases and cause havoc in towns where they're not used to this influx of people. What are they going to do with these blokes walking down the street? You know, what are you going to do bringing your kids home from school? How are you going to look after them? What about your own personal safety at night? What happens if you just want to go out for a walk? Do you feel vulnerable? I know that my missus does in a way that I don't. And she's right to. And I think it's really, really sad. As Rupert Lowe said earlier on the show, we have lived for many, many decades, hopefully centuries for all I know, in a high trust society, and that is being eroded by this sort of policy. So let's talk to the chair of Crowborough Shield, Kim Bailey. A very good evening to you, Kim.
Hi, Johnny. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Listen, you must be very worried about this.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole town is. And the first thing to say is, just following on from what you were saying, is the Home Office has actually got their eyes set on another 2,000 sites.
Wow.
So you are absolutely right. This is likely to come to a town near you. And the second thing, which makes Crowborough slightly different from some of the other sites, is that it wasn't an army barracks. This was a cadet training centre that was home to hundreds of local cadets, as well as thousands of national cadets. So it was the main training centre for the whole of the South East. Now, all of those cadets have actually been evicted to make way for these. Oh my gosh,
where are they going?
So currently, the Army cadets have got a temporary place. I'm not sure where that is. The others are, so one of the other companies are marching at Uckfield, and I think so there's 3 companies, and the last one hasn't actually got anywhere to go. So they are completely displaced.
Crowborough and West Sussex is charming, and I know because I'm an adopted man of East Sussex. It's all very nice and very lovely, and this will affect the high trust environment of Crowborough. It will affect how you behave. If you're a young woman walking home in the dark in the winter, you're going to take a different route. You might just drive there or take the bus there instead. If you've got kids coming home from school, male or female, aged in the teenage years, you're going to have that kind of creeping feeling of, are they safe? Should I not meet them from school? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so one of the key things is the cadets were not allowed to continue marching at the site because it was deemed unsafe. Now, bearing in mind, these cadets, 100-odd cadets at each time, who are under the guard and supervision of 4 ex-military personnel, were deemed to be unsafe to be on site with the asylum seekers. However, just outside the camp entrance, and I'm talking a matter of feet away from the entrance, is the bus stop that is used by local children. Gosh. And that is deemed to be safe. So they are very contradictory in terms of how they are saying that this is safe for one, but not for the other. Now, the other thing, I mean, the whole thing is contradictory, Johnny. So what you've got in the press in the past day or so is that you've got the Home Office spokesperson saying that they're going to accelerate at speed. They're going to move them into Crowborough and Inverness at speed. But then what you've got is the Home Office responding to our legal team saying, well, no decision's been made yet, so we can't give you any impact assessments. We can't give you any of the documents, no disclosure because no decision has been made. So they're completely contradicting themselves. It's totally underhanded by this government. It's deceitful. this is not what a democracy is. This is not what the people elected, just to be ram-raided through with decisions that have no regard for local people. There are going to be problems. This site is on the edge of a small town of 20,000 people. There's nothing here for them to do. So when these, the asylum seekers want to go somewhere, they're going to come into this town. There is nothing for them to do. So they are going to be in groups of, 3 to 8 people. So myself and Alex, who is the other director of Crowborough Shield, we actually went up to Wethersfield to speak to local residents in Braintree, where they are getting buses in, and to the people in Wethersfield to see actually what is it like, because we see things in the media,
yes,
but actually let's talk to them firsthand. And basically everything that people are fearing here in Crowborough is happening in Wethersfield. There are groups of these young men that hang around on the street corners in the shopping centres, and the girls and the women that we spoke to said that they wouldn't go into Wethersfield at the time they knew these buses were coming. Now, we know that the Foster Hartley, I believe they're called, have been awarded a contract to do the same thing here in Crowborough. So these asylum seekers are going to be bussed into Tunbridge Wells or Uckfield, Brighton, or other little towns. So you're going to get the same issues. It's not going to be any different. The difference with Crowborough is that we are walking distance from the camp, and all you've got in our town is a few schools, a couple of churches, and a couple of little independent shops and charity shops. There is absolutely nothing here for them to do. So if they're not getting the buses into Tunbridge Wells, Brighton and Uckfield, they're going to be hanging around in Crowborough town, which we all know it gets dark at sort of 4 o'clock. Crowborough is full of small twittens and little pathways that are unlit, tree-lined. The crimes that you're seeing on the TV, they are going to go unheard and unstopped. And that is what this community is worried about. And it's the secrecy that is surrounding it from the Home Office, and until recently, Wilton District Council as well. So no one has got any facts or information to go by, because everything has been shrouded in absolute secrecy, which essentially should be reserved for national security.
I'm really upset
it's
for you
not a national
here.
security issue.
No, well, it's a local security issue. I'm really upset for you as well. And there's something else here, which is, of course, Crowborough isn't just a local community. It's also a satellite town for people who work in slightly bigger towns, for example, Brighton or Hove or, I don't know, Worthing, maybe Eastbourne, and perhaps going north into London. And people are maybe trying to sell their houses or buy houses there. I'm sure the housing market there in Crowborough is suffering this winter as well because of this, right?
It's terrible. It's so sad. And that's another thing that wasn't considered, is the impact on the economy. So myself, I did actually have my house on the market. I took it off the market.
I bet.
And from the moment that this news dropped in the media, which was the 28th of October, within 2 weeks, we had heard of 15 properties that had fallen through at or near exchange.
Of course.
So we then actually spoke to a lot of the estate agents, and all bar one estate agent said that they had serious issues. They'd lost lots of money. In those 2 weeks, we were talking like 45,000. We had another estate agent that had to lay 2 members of staff off before Christmas. Another estate agent was saying that they're predominantly commission-based, so they're not going to get paid for Christmas. And these are people's lives. These are people's livelihoods. People want to downsize their properties, perhaps because of financial reasons, or they're retiring.
For any reason.
Any reason at all.
Like and growing families. People moving, people getting promoted and moving from, I don't know, from one part of northern London into southern London, if you like. You need to be nearer where you're going. People downsizing after 30 years in their houses. I mean, this is just...
It's disgraceful. It's absolutely disgraceful.
I'm incandescent. I don't even live near Crowborough. I'm incandescent for you. I'm furious at this.
Well, the good thing is, though, Johnny...
Go on, tell me something good. Oh, my goodness.
It is good, because Crowborough Shield, we formed this community interest company off the back of this decision by the Home Office and obviously our Prime Minister and Home Secretary. This town has come together like nothing you have ever seen. And yesterday we've been doing fundraising. So the fundraising has been going on now for just over a month, I think, about 5 weeks. Yesterday we felt that we were quite short, because we want to get to court as soon as possible in January. We were slightly short. In a space of about 12 hours, we raised over £10,000 from this community. Now that is the strength of feeling, and that is clear testament and demonstration of how strongly this community feels. But it is, there are people donating from America, from up north, from all over this country, but predominantly it's local people, which is just absolutely phenomenal. And we will be going to court. they've raised enough money to get us to court. So we will fight as hard as we can, because this whole situation is just completely ludicrous. It's not a suitable place. It's an army cadet training centre, which is not suitable for housing anyone, let alone vulnerable people. It's just totally unsuitable. Even, you know, Care for Calais and a lot of the other charities, they're saying this is inhumane treatment of the asylum seekers. So whichever the kind of end of, wherever you sit in this decision, it's wrong. So whether you are supporting of migrants coming here, this type of accommodation is harmful, it's inhumane. And if you're against it, then obviously then you're against it through the fact that it's going to impact on communities.
Are you going to win?
I'm confident. I'm confident in our legal team and I'm confident in what we've done.
Well, I wish you every success. A Merry Christmas, Kim.
And
enjoy the Christmas, and hopefully something will be made of this madness. That's Kim Bailey. She is the chair of Crowborough Shield, fighting this idea that the first asylum seekers are due into a Sussex barracks of army cadets in a matter of weeks, as the council has joined legal action against the Home Office. It's the secrecy of this which is most worrying, that the Home Office know that actually if they were to tell people about the effect it would have on their communities, all hell would break loose, as if it hasn't already. I mean, do they hate the people so much that they want to do this? Do they care about them? Honestly, I'm at a loss at how unpopular. Like, let's pick a policy and make it as an unpopular one as we can. And here's another one. I'm honestly, my brain is fuddled. I don't understand any of it. In fact, fuddled's not a word, is it? Right? 0344 499 1000. I'm going to take a break, and then once I've calmed myself down, I'll read some of your very sober text messages, so stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome along. Jonny here in the chair between now and 10 o'clock. Duncan Barks will be entertaining you, thrilling you with more talk discussion after 10 o'clock. Lots of texts for you, and thank you very much for making this such an engaging show. John in Wallington, always the expert on geopolitical issues around the world. He says, I feel the coming year or two will see China seize Taiwan. That's what Mesa Gifford was talking about, how that we live in a multipolar world where Donald Trump is tolerating the big guys, you know, going in and intimidating, invading the smaller guys, like the imperialist world that we lived in 120 years ago. And he says that it'll open up another front in the Indo-Pacific region. We must support our allies, like Israel, he says, right now, more than ever. So thank you, John in Wallington. Okay, this is from Fern in Glasgow. And Fern says, animal welfare should be priority over religious beliefs of people from non-Christian countries without exception. This is Great Britain. Don't like kind slaughter methods? Go vegan or import meats of choice from their foreign non-Christian countries of choice. That says Fern in Glasgow. Well, the thing about that is, Fern, that British people are made up of many kinds of religion and many kinds of tolerances. And one of the reasons why this country is one of the great countries of the world, if not the greatest, is because we invented it with the Magna Carta, with, property rights and kind of the sense of what we're allowed to be and who we're allowed to be. You can do what you want as long as it doesn't harm anyone else. That's kind of the country, the blessed land that we live in here, the New Jerusalem. And I hope that's not coming to an end. But I fear through misunderstandings like this, through the progressive movements of things like animal rights, and it is part of the progressive movement, that we are beginning to end these ideas of tolerance. And I just worry for the future in that respect. And, very often, the ideas of progressiveness come from the left, but animal rights is a sort of coalition of the left and right, isn't it? So we have to take into account tolerance to one another. As long as it's not harming anyone else, then perhaps it should be allowed. That is kind of one of the blessings this country has produced and why we won the Second World War, actually. Thank God we did. Georgina in London, hello.
Oh, good evening.
Good evening and
Jonny.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, my darling. I'm only ringing. It's nothing political for a change.
Well, that's nice.
I'm ringing you. I heard what you said earlier about people being able to ring in and you don't feel alone.
Yes.
And do you know what, Jonny? I've said many times, but I'm not a young woman anymore, and my children are all grown up, and I do tend to find myself on my own quite a lot.
Yes.
And Talk and all of the presenters there have given me a new passion for politics that I hadn't been able to share with anyone. And you've really given me a purpose. And I just wanted to say to you and to all the other presenters, to Kevin, to Petri, to Julia, to Ian, to Peter, to everyone, and everyone who answers the phone, a huge, huge thank you. I can't tell you what you've done for me. It's given me a new lease of life and a new passion for politics that I didn't think that I'd ever find again. And I really wanted to express my heartfelt and sincere thanks.
I'm so excited to hear that because I can really relate to this, Georgina, because my mum is that person as well, and she has Talk on. She's a bit biased because her two kids are on it.
Oh, bless her. You know what?
But
I can understand that.
But then again, we're not on all the time, and she has been given this new purpose to her arguments and what she believes in. Sometimes it makes her more angry than I would prefer, but at least it provides her with a connection to the real world there that perhaps on other channels you just don't get.
Yeah, well, you don't, because you're not allowed that interaction. And I know that the other listeners probably get sick and tired of hearing my voice. But every time I ring in because I'm passionate about what I'm saying. And it really helps me. I mean, before Talk, I used to watch PMQs and I used to watch the media news, not mainstream media, on social media. And I used to get so frustrated because I felt like I had things to say, but there was no outlet, Jonny. And then when I found Talk, I found this magnificent outlet where people were prepared to listen. And whether you were right or wrong in your opinions, there was always a platform for you to air your views. And that's something I think you can't buy that, Jonny. No. And honestly, I can't say thank you enough, my darling. Thank you to all of you.
Georgina, that is really nice. Georgina, thank you so much. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And may your children come and visit you across Christmas and New Year, because I think that might be a bit of a public service warning to your kids. Get to see Georgina, will you? It's a very important point, actually. You know, sometimes in conversations, Talk gets grouped together with other stations, OK? But we're very, very distinctive and very different. And the reason we're very different is what Georgina says. Georgina's on air. Georgina is my co-presenter for that few minutes. She is my sounding board. She helps me define what I'm going to say now for the remainder of the show. Okay, it's you who contribute to the editorial in a way that no other output does, because we're for you, we're on your side, we're your peeps, man. We're who you are. Other stations don't do that, and we don't relent to any kind of wokery. We are for the people. We are a unique output, and I must tell you how proud I am to have been here from the very start, from day one. I'm one of those characters, and it's nice to be here after all these years, and it's nice to have built up friendships and acquaintances with people who I might not even ever meet, but who I talk to regularly right here on the home of common sense. So now, we were talking about Crowborough before with Crowborough Shield, and I think let's go back to West Sussex and talk about safety at night time with Leslie. Leslie, hello. How far do you live from Crowborough?
Hi, I'm down in Worthing, West Sussex.
Okay, so not very far.
Right next to the park.
Yes.
And you know, I've taken my dog out there for years, but
yes.
over the last 2 years, I've got to be honest with you, with our foreign friends coming over, it's becoming a little bit terrorising. Like tonight, I took my dog out at 6 o'clock. I finished work at 5, so 6 o'clock I take her out. But then when I walk around our local park, there's let's say unsavoury characters there, and I get, you know, you get frightened. I have a walking stick that I don't need, but just in case. I know that's wrong. But
Well, it's like as a deterrent.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's funny, but it's not funny, actually.
But you never used to have to do that before.
No.
Not in the park.
No. I'm really sorry that lives in your head, Leslie. Because is it a reality, or is it something that you're frightened of because you've watched news or whatever? Is it a real feeling? Have you been shouted at in a way that you'd never been shouted at before? Is there something that's happened to you?
No, there's definitely. I don't know what to say. Our foreign friends,
right?
Coming over, they're in the park.
And what do they do? Do they look at you? Are they just passing the time of day? Do they bother you?
They sit in like congregations.
Right, like groups of kids.
I don't know what I'm going to say on air, but smoking dope.
Right.
And they've all got bags on them and everything.
Right.
You can just tell.
Right, and you find them intimidating?
Very much so, yes.
Have you got a friend to go with you sometimes? Someone perhaps who's a bloke a bit younger than you?
Oh, my son sometimes does, but my dog needs a walk every night, so he's not always there.
No.
So
I mean, what about like a group of people that you could go out and walk with?
I said I could look into that.
It might be a good idea. You know, if you're tooled up, I don't say tooled up, but if you've got 3 or 4 friends who look like a community of friends of people, you might find them leaving you alone or not looking your way.
Yeah, I see what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really sorry, Leslie, because this is how long have you lived there for?
Oh, God, 30-odd years.
All your life? All your adult life?
All my... since I'm 64 now, since I was 27.
All your adult life, Leslie, like I said.
Basically, yeah.
So tell us, what was it like 37 years ago? How has it changed? What's changed for the worst and what's changed for the better?
I'm not quite sure what I'm allowed to say, but I come from London.
Right.
I come from Croydon. I went to Croydon College, and back in those days, when I was 18, 19, I used to go out with friends, not worry.
Yes.
And
different time.
Funny enough, I went up there about 2-3 years ago, and I just can't believe the change. I don't know what I'm meant to say on air because I don't want to
say it. And if I think you can't say it, I'll say you can't say it. But say it. This is the home of common sense. Say it, Leslie. Don't self-censor. Let's have a chat.
Well, when I was in Croydon College and everything, I had all my friends in Streatham and Bromley and everything. We used to go to the pubs, you know, college days, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. And I went, funny enough, I went up there about 6-7 years ago, and it was like a whole different area. So many different cultures, so many. I felt foreign in my own country. That's what I'm going to say.
You can say that, Leslie. That is absolutely fine. And thank you for articulating it in such an unemotional and realistic way. You can say these things. Don't think you can't say them. Okay? I mean, you know, it's okay, Leslie, and I'm glad you have said that. Leslie in West Sussex there, you know, don't self-censor. You know, I know that this is a British thing to be tolerant, and we are tolerant, and we're great people. But sometimes that tolerance is tested when you go back to a place that you grew up with and it's changed, and very, very fast. You know, don't be intimidated by your own decency, okay? Because Leslie's a decent person. She said, I don't really think I can say this. But you've got to say it. We've got to deal with these problems. Otherwise, we'll be subsumed by problems in the future. 0344 499 1000. I'm Jonny Gould. What's your name? Stay tuned and I'll find out.
Every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
Such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, are taking that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say. So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically.
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Jonny Gould here between now and 10 o'clock. And again, this story again is a world gone mad file. OK, I objected to a man using my gym's women's changing room. Now I'm banned by the council. Despite the Supreme Court's ruling on biological sex. Do you remember that day? That was where J.K. Rowling was in her fancy balcony smoking a big one, a big cigar. You know, we won, OK? Common sense won. Even though that happened, Miranda Newsom was punished for protecting a female-only space. She entered the female changing room of her local council-run leisure centre in Southwark in South London. That's not far from here. She first noticed someone who was clearly a biological geezer washing his hands in the sink. Newsom, a 60-year-old marketing executive, had been a member of the gym for over 2 years, using it 4 or 5 times a week to keep fit. But this wasn't the first time she'd noticed men using these women's facilities and had emailed the centre previously to complain, and they hadn't bothered to reply. However, on this occasion, she refused to remain silent. I saw him straight away. He was a man, 5'10", bigger than her, long hair, wearing a halter top and loose-fitting trousers, standing at the basin washing his hands. A married mother of 2, said Newsom. I'd spotted him in the female changing rooms before and been too nervous to say anything, because you would be if you're on your own. He's the second bloke I've seen in the female changing rooms at this centre, but today I was feeling braver, so as I approached him, I said calmly, I'm sure you're probably a perfectly nice person, but this is a female changing room and males can't be in here. He turned on me, immediately saying, I'm a woman on my birth certificate and my passport, but he was unmistakably male. So before Newsom could respond, she says, he started filming me, right? And asking if other women in the changing room had a problem with him being there. She continues, my heart was racing. Of course, people don't like this confrontation. My heart was racing. One woman, possibly in her 20s, she said she had no problem. Duh. There was another woman standing in just a towel. She didn't say anything. And much to the surprise of Newsom, at a meeting last week, the Southwark Council said it became apparent that the local authority decided to punish her rather than put their efforts into ensuring women weren't put in a similar position again. This has happened to me, right, where I took on this bloke in the street protesting with a big Palestine flag. So I had a word, and what does he do? He pulls out his cine camera, ergo his iPhone 16, and starts filming me. So what did I do? I went towards him and said, go on, make me famous. Go on, tweet it. These guys are cowards. But then I'm a bloke, OK, and I don't care about them. And she's a woman in a female changing room. She might not have many clothes on. It's difficult and it's wrong. Jane Sullivan is here, sports coordinator of Women's Rights Network. Jane, have I told the story correctly? Good evening to you.
Good evening. Yes, you have told it correctly.
yeah.
And Miranda, who is the woman who complained about this chap in the changing rooms, contacted Women's Rights Network because she really was absolutely flabbergasted that so many months after the Supreme Court ruling that clearly stated the word female applies only to women and girls of the biological variety. And I hate having to use that rider biological, because we all know what females are. We think it was incredibly brave of Miranda
Really?
to speak up. Because
And not
it is quite
supported
scary.
by other girls in the changing room either. That's not helpful.
Well, I think the problem is, if you think about being in a changing room, some women say, oh no, it's fine, I don't mind. Well, actually, they can't speak for every woman. They the law is the law, and they can't sort of say, oh, well, I don't mind, so nobody else should mind either. So there's that category of woman. The poor woman in the towel who didn't say anything, well, I think if I was standing in a towel and there was a bloke in the changing room, I would be trying to get to the changing room to change and get decent, because you're quite vulnerable in a towel. And then Miranda was the one who spoke up and said, no, this isn't right. And fair play to her, she actually stuck to her guns. And the upshot is that she's now been banned from Southwark leisure centres. I understand, I think, all of the leisure centres in her area. So she can't use her council leisure centres anymore because she's been banned for speaking up. Although I understand the council told her it was the tone of her complaint that was wrong, not the actual complaint, in which case, why are they still allowing the men in? So Miranda's been banned, and the problem is other women will now be reluctant to speak up if they see something untoward in the changing rooms, because they'll see what happened to Miranda, and they'll think, well, I don't want to be banned because I want to carry on using my leisure centre, so I'll just keep quiet. You know, that's the way things happen.
But Jane, it's against the law. So the council have acted against the law, haven't they?
Well, it is against the law, and the Supreme Court judgment on the 16th of April 2025 stated categorically that the word female applies to women and girls. If it says female on the changing room door, there should not be any males inside. The problem is that Southwark Council are telling us that they're waiting for the guidance from the Human Rights Commission.
Right, so there's a vacuum in between the Supreme Court ruling and the advice. So now we've got this gaping injustice hole until the human rights people
it's not with the Human Rights Commission anymore. It's with Bridget Phillipson, our Minister for Women and Equality. And, you know, Bridget Phillipson seems awfully reluctant to support women and stand up for their legal rights, even though she does have in her job description that for women. You know, it actually says it in her job title. So Bridget Phillipson's had the guidance for several months now. She's sat on it. She's not doing anything with it, and we question why organisations need this guidance anyway, because it was very clear in the Supreme Court judgment that the judge said you don't need to wait for guidance. This is the law.
Right.
Apply it now. So Southwark Council must apply the law. I don't know if Miranda is considering legal action, but I'm sure that many people would be willing to support her if she did.
In the meantime, she's going to get unfit.
She's not the only one that we know about.
No, and this is happening again. In the meantime, she's got to schlep down the road, join another gym, get unfit, while the slow wheels of justice will eventually go into her favour, right?
Well, we hope that with this bit of exposure, Southwark Council might have another look at it and think maybe they have rather overreacted, and maybe they ought to sort out their changing rooms and sort out their policies to ensure that it doesn't happen to other women, and that, you know, Miranda could go back in the new year. It's just not satisfactory that a woman gets punished for speaking out about something that the council should be doing, i.e. following the law.
Absolutely. Jane Sullivan, thank you very much indeed for highlighting this on Talk, and I hope that justice does prevail and Southwark Council relent in the new year. Merry Christmas. It's Jonny in the chair between now and 10 o'clock, and after the break we're going to talk to Dr. Alan Mendoza about Bob Villan and his crew.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
What a fantastic show we've had so far. Welcome along. It's the final hour of Jonny Gould here, and then Duncan Barks takes to this very chair after the 10 o'clock news. And if you've just switched on, there's always a chance to watch again or indeed listen again via the Talk Radio, even Talk TV apps via your app store. And of course, you can scroll back on the live output on YouTube as well, because I think you'll find that there's some really fascinating guests earlier on in the show, and I'm sure it will activate your sensory perceptions of the news going on at the moment. God bless Georgina, says Kevin in Barnstable. I know that Georgina speaks for so many people. She should know that she speaks for me, says Kevin. I love to hear her contributions. She really gets it. Starmer would do well to listen to Georgina, but he's too simple to know it. Mike in Whitney, it must be terrifying for the residents of Crowborough, but where do the thousands of very scary looking men that come over here from the channel? Very scary indeed, says Mike in Whitney. And we had our caller before saying she's frightened to go out to the park in Worthing. And I do suggest to her that maybe she can go out with her son a bit more, but maybe get a walking group together so that she doesn't feel so intimidated. Very sad situation in our high trust environment that we should have this lack of trust when one goes out at night. I'm a bloke, so I feel less vulnerable, but I know that my other half feels a little bit intimidated about going out, and I do appreciate that. And I say be bold, but that's easy for me to say. But I just hope that you can enjoy your Christmas and enjoy the world around you, enjoy the society that you have left that you can engage with. Now, there have been some truly horrible stories break today. The plot to mount the UK's worst terror attack, thank goodness, has been foiled. 2 ISIS fanatics who planned to kill as many Jews as possible in Manchester are found guilty. These guys were inspired by the Bataclan incident. You remember that about 10 or so years ago, where 150 French people were murdered in cafes and at a concert. And police have dropped the investigation into the Bob Villan Glastonbury death to the IDF chants. And of course, Greta Thunberg's been arrested at a Palestine Action protest because they're a proscribed terrorist group, and she was chanting for them, wasn't she? So let's try and unpack all this terrible news now with the Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. Say good evening to Dr. Alan Mendoza. Alan, hello.
Hello, Johnny.
How are we doing?
Well, not a good day, is it? It's terrible.
It's a terrible day. I can't remember a worse day for Britain in terms of fighting the threat of Islamism than this. And we've truly dodged a bullet or maybe even a bomb from this plot foiled, and a miracle to our intelligence services that this has been stopped.
Yeah, I mean, thank goodness, obviously.
Yeah.
Because, this had the potential to be, as you pointed out, the worst terrorist incident in Britain's history, because you had 2 fanatics, ISIS supporters, who were trying to get hold of guns with significant ammunition, and who planned to go and kill hundreds of people. So, you can see the end results. Bondi Beach last week, you saw what could happen there with sort of very, slow rearming weapons. And here you'd have had semi-automatics, which would have been a totally different game in terms of how many people killed. And just there by the grace of God and by the, security services having been on top of it. Interesting story, by the way, of course, how they found what was going on and how they stopped it. But we were very lucky, weren't we? Because this could have been absolutely catastrophic.
Just to outline how they did it, because they befriended these people on Facebook, didn't they?
Yes, what turned out was that the lead member, as it were, of this gang of two had created, I think, 10 different accounts and was pumping out ISIS propaganda. This brought him to the attention of the authorities, who then sent someone in to firstly monitor him and then, as you say, befriend him. They uncovered the plot, or rather they were part of the plot because they were facilitating the exchange of weapons. And of course, they were able to catch them as a result. But thank goodness, because had he been able to, contact somebody else who might have supplied those weapons, we'd have had a very different outcome.
Have they got each and every one of them? There's 2 going to be sent down in mid-February, and there's a 3rd one who's been found guilty of not dobbing them in, isn't there, at this time?
Yes, which is quite interesting in itself as well as to how far this goes. What this shows you is that, of course, even with sort of plots where people think that it's fairly contained, more people realise this and more people know what's going on than is first assumed. So, I think it'll be interesting just to pull on those sort of cords and see where they lead and how far this plot actually goes.
And so we've truly dodged a bullet there. And just the consequence of this, God forbid something happened like this, where, I don't know, tens, maybe hundreds of innocent civilians, whatever their ethnic background might be, happened in this country, it would change the country's consensus for good. The Jewish community would ponder their next step. Many would leave, but not just Jewish people of the Christian faith who feel vulnerable, Sikhs, Hindus, and other minorities might feel it's time up for them in this previously tolerant country. What do you think might have happened? What do you think will happen as a consequence of this, Alan, in terms of people's planning?
Well, what will happen is very little because, of course, thankfully it was stopped. So,
yes.
Though, the sort of outcomes you've suggested won't be happening because, of course, people have, literally dodged a bullet, as you pointed out. So, but it highlights the problem, doesn't it, Johnny? It highlights that, once again, there are people in this country who seek to kill their fellow citizens in the name of ideology, in the name, in this case, of course, of Islamist ideology. And this is not an isolated case, is it? We are seeing this time and time again. Whether it is, attacks on Jews, whether it is attacks on Christmas markets, attacks on people of no faith, of all faiths, violence in different places, we see that Islamism is at the heart of the problems that we are facing in this country. And therefore, the appropriate question to be asking the authorities is, why are we tolerating this alien creed within our midst? Why are we suggesting that it is somehow permissible and possible for people to follow Islamism, which, let's be clear, is different to Islam? It's a strand of Islam. It is not Islam. It is part, it is a choice that people make. And, most Muslims will reject it. I mean, by the way, there's a good case for suggesting that Muslims would lead the country if Islamists came to power.
Sure.
As well, or continued in their paths. But why are we allowing Islamism to run rampant, to wait for the next atrocity? These people, Johnny, I'm sorry, have no place in this country. They have no place in this country because there is nothing British about Islamism. There is nothing in British philosophy, British history, or British tradition that has anything to do with Islamism. And so, as a result, we need to, the authorities need to look at this carefully and go, should we allow these people still to be here? If they have citizenship rights elsewhere, we should be stripping them of any rights to be here or any citizenship here, and we should be deporting them, quite clearly, because they're an enemy of the state. They're an enemy of British tradition, British history, British philosophy, and they're a danger to its people here. If you want to believe in Islamism, get out. That's what the message needs to be.
Indeed. I mean, it was written about by Ed Hussein in The Spectator today, who himself is a reformed Islamist, who now is someone who is effectively a heretic for those Islamists, who has written about the threat to Muslims who are second and third generation Muslims in this country. And he had to write it from the United States, where he now lives, because of the threat he feels to his life and the life of his family. And so it is apposite to say that Islamism is a choice for the Muslim community, but more people perhaps from that community should speak out as well, however brave that would make them.
Well, of course. I mean, I think that's the key thing. It is about, people saying this is not our choice. This is
not in our name.
Not in our name. This is not our version of the religion, and we reject it, and we reject them. And I think that is going to have to come in a much stronger way, because Islamism keeps on rearing its ugly head. And as a result, everyone, including non-Islamist Muslims, need to be united in kicking it out.
Now, talking of that, we need friends in the police, don't we? Because an investigation by the Avon and Somerset police into charts made during the Bob Vylan performance at Glastonbury has concluded that no further action will be taken. And this is, of course, from the height of summer. We're talking 6 months ago. So we've concluded, after reviewing all the evidence, that it doesn't meet the criminal threshold outlined by the CPS for any person to be prosecuted, said Avon and Somerset police. No further action will be taken on the basis there is insufficient evidential for there to be a realistic prospect of conviction. The investigation relates to the chance of death to the IDF, the Israel Defence Forces, and other comments made during the band's performances on the Westholt stage at Glastonbury. Bob Vylan are an alleged London-based English punk rap duo. Alan, I was there at the protest outside the Kentish Town Forum, where these people still perform. This is really an outrage. And in the same week that London's and Manchester's police come together to say that we're going to step in and stop chance of globalising the Intifada, this flash mobs, these protests will stop saying globalise the Intifada, and now they can say with some comfort, death to the IDF, because it's going to be allowed.
Well, I mean, this is a total disaster.
It is, isn't it?
The police are all over the place when it comes to these definitions, it would seem. You've got those two police forces who've come out and said that you can't say globalise the Intifada now, because, note the entertaining term, the context has changed, Johnny. That's what they said. The context has changed. Now it appears Intifada, which before was clearly some kind of, pyjama party, has now become a dangerous concept. I mean, you can't make this nonsense up. And of course, the other police forces not following them in that. No one else has come in and said, well, we'll do it as well. And then you've got, Avon and Somerset saying, well, this seems okay, death, the IDF. Surely they're in a spiritual sense, right? In a rhetorical sense. That's clearly what this is all about. It's a farce. But here's the thing. Everyone can see it's a farce. The people who are doing it can't believe their luck, of course, because they can continue to do it. Everyone else goes, what an absolute disgrace it is, and what a nonsense policing in this country is becoming. And I tell you, Johnny, the problem with this is that our institutions are being broken down by the people within them. They are, contributing to a collapse in confidence in institutions like the police, like the judiciary, like the BBC, because of the way they're acting and the way they're behaving. And we have to be asking ourselves, when will common sense reassert itself, and when can people once again feel safe and secure that, sort of mad statements like this will actually be prosecuted as opposed to being allowed to be continued? Until we have that point, we will continue to see that decline in support for institutions, in belief in institutions, and that's terrible for democracy, Johnny. Absolutely appalling.
Indeed it is. I read a book many years ago by Neil Ferguson about the erosion of Western instruments of society, of organisations, and it seems to be on a downward curve as we progress through this decade. And talking of that, on a world tour, Greta Thunberg was in town today and arrested for spouting about the Palestine action. It's like she deliberately got arrested, but enough of her kind of high-profile arrests. Who is she? Where does she come from? What is the fascination with her? Why is what happened? Where's she come from? Who's she funded by?
Well, that's who she's funded by is an interesting question. But we know where she came from. She came out of, nowhere essentially as the child who's going to sort of save the world from, global warming, which she.
But that's not real, is it? She's been planted, isn't she? She's something, isn't she? She's not just a nice Scandinavian young lady with learning difficulties or whatever. She's something, isn't she?
No, Johnny, she's totally bonkers. I don't think though that someone went out there and went, oh, let's find a 14-year-old Swedish girl and put her to the front and centre of these things. I'm sorry to say that I'm much more of the sort of cock-up theory than conspiracy.
Really? But she's very fundable because, of course, she's a darling of the cameras. You know,
now she is. Now she is. I think I think what she is now is very different to what she was at the start.
Right. You think she was an accident? You really think she was a cock-up?
I think she was a total accident in the social media age, and suddenly everyone went, "Wow, this is amazing." You know, because people. You know, when you found these people who had no particular knowledge, but were seen to be, you know, somehow exciting and different because they were different. So I think she was found accidentally. It was an accident. And of course, what's interesting is her own morphing from, you don't hear her talking much about global warming anymore. She's moved on to other things. Well, why has she moved on to other things? What's, you know, driving that? That's the interesting question as to how today she's become this sort of, you know, Palestinian warrior as opposed to the global warming icon she once was. Maybe she's like a pop star. She sheds her skin every few years and changes her, you know, kind of idea. What will be the next, you know, iteration of Greta? Who knows? We'll have to tune in and find out. But it is, you know, sort of rent a cause, isn't it? And suddenly she joins on that score. You know, it was interesting at the start. She was a bit different. Everyone, you know, was entertained for a while by her rantings, but now I think everyone just rolls their eyes, don't they? And although she's been arrested, no one's. I mean, I didn't even notice, to be honest, until a little bit earlier when someone said, and I was like, okay, fine. You know, I think that's sort of general principle. We don't need to give these people more oxygen or publicity at all.
No, well, she's an intersectional warrior, so you can almost guess where she will go next, and where she goes next will be our next topic of conversation in the future. Dr. Alan Mendoza from the Henry Jackson Society. Thank you very much indeed for joining us right here on Talk. Now, Roger in Hounslow. Johnny, you mentioned Georgina as a great regular caller. I'd like to say that Herbie from Harrow is also a fantastic regular on Talk. He always has his finger on the pulse of relevant subjects discussed on Talk. Is that right? Says Roger in Hounslow. God bless Georgina, says Kevin in Barnstaple. Lovely. I'm glad you're enjoying the show as much as I am. It is Johnny in the chair between now and 10 o'clock. We'll take a break with more of your calls, your takes on what we've spoken about tonight, right here on Jonny Gould here on Talk.
Every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
Such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, have taken that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say. So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically.
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Warm welcome to the show. It's Johnny in the chair between now and 10 o'clock. Your calls and texts always matter, so let's go straight to the line and let's talk to Grace in London. Hello, Grace.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you. And I apologise if I misspoke anything on the last occasion I called you. I worried after I'd spoken to you.
Go on, what was it?
I was explaining, we were talking about anti-Semitism.
Yes.
And I was trying to explain why I think some people think certain things. And I was worried that in trying to explain that, I might have given the impression that I think those things, which is not what I was trying to say.
No, okay. Well, thanks for putting that right. You know, I think it might have been in your head. I mean, sometimes people misspeak, but people might understand from the cut of your jib the way you really think. Sometimes people stumble over their words.
Continually worrying about coming across in ways I don't mean to and getting my words wrong. I'm just endlessly anxious about it.
Okay, Grace, don't worry.
But with regard to hate incidents or non-crime hate incidents, it's evidently the case that police do not have time to deal with all of these things, even if it were correct for them to be clamping down on all of these tweets or what have you. Even if that were the right thing to be doing, they don't have the time, and it's really important that the police are focusing on addressing the most serious
on real crimes like shoplifting or your house being burgled.
Yeah, absolutely, and I really worry for victims of those sorts of crimes who aren't getting the support that they need and the trauma that they're suffering. But also, it just seems very strange to legislate about hate. I really believe that we should endeavour to love our neighbours and even love our enemies, because I'm trying to follow Jesus, although I'm doing it very poorly, but I believe that's the right thing to do. But that's my personal choice.
Yes.
And the government can't force us to decide not to be hateful. It makes no sense. Ultimately, hate is a thing in one's own heart and mind.
Right.
And I think, we ought to, I personally believe that we should aim to not be hateful, but we ought to address the negative thoughts that exist within our hearts and minds.
But let me ask that question to you, Grace. What happens if you love that person, that you mean peace, that you don't want to covet your neighbour's ox, but they want to kill you? They want your ox. They want your wife or your husband. What do you do then? You can't turn the other cheek, can you?
I mean, my thought as a Christian is, and again, this is my decision. It's not what other people are obliged to do. But I'm kind of asking that God will help me to be more empathetic and compassionate for other people. But in terms of legislating, one needs to have a system. I think you're referring to immigration and people who might have particular ideas.
Shall I tell you exactly what I'm talking about? I'm talking about Russia's invasion of Ukraine, or I'm talking about Gaza's invasion of Israel on October the 7th. You know, there are two prime examples from the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and I think it's important for governments to have policies in place that, I mean, with regard to Russia, for example, Ukraine needs to have a policy of defending its people, but that's quite a different situation from the situation that we have here with immigration, which is not at all like the situation with Russia. I think that we ourselves, as individuals, have, I personally think, a moral responsibility to try to be compassionate and empathetic, but it's not the government's place to force us one way or the other, and the government can't be dictating about what we're feeling. If a person is feeling hateful, I think it would be better if they didn't, but it's not up for the government to legislate about it. And I found that as I've tried to seek God's help in becoming more compassionate, that he has worked a change in my heart and mind, but that's nothing to do with legislation.
No, it's your own private place.
Hatred.
Yes, Grace, thank you very much for that thoughtful view, a Christian view on hate and trying to find love in your heart, if that's possible today in our very challenging environment. Let's go to Pigeon in Michigan and speak to our old friend Cindy, who introduced us to Jacob the other night.
Yeah,
Hi, Cindy.
Johnny, it's good to speak to you.
How are you?
Love it. You know what? Your hair looks fabulous.
Oh,
You've got
thank
your
you.
glasses on.
Thank you.
You are on fire tonight, let me tell
Cindy.
you. And
Thank you, love.
Georgina just echoed the hearts and thoughts of so many people, and I'm included in that. I love Talk TV. I love all the people. I love the team. You all are wonderful.
We
And
think you're a
thank
very
you.
significant member of our team as well,
Thank
by the
you
way.
for that.
Well, I do.
Thank
You've been with me on all my shows, right from early in the morning to late at night, and you're from a very exotic place as well, which makes you even more interesting.
Well, you know what? You rock.
I rock.
Period.
Hey, man.
You rock, Johnny.
I'm learning American, man. You rock. Hey, baby. I've watched enough movies and enough Jack Black to know what you're talking about.
I know you do. Let's talk Islamism here.
Okay, let's talk Islamism. Does that rock or not rock? It does not rock.
They don't rock.
No, they do not.
They do not, and I'm terrified. You know what? I'm terrified because we don't know. We've got a lot of people here that we don't know where they've come from, and you've got a lot of people there in the UK. You don't know where they've come from, and not every immigrant that comes in, but Islamists don't seem to want to assimilate, and that's a problem.
Right, it's a different thing.
That's a big problem.
An incompatibility with our democratic Western values built up over centuries of tolerance and education and even warfare that we've had to overcome in order to make our societies the freest they could have been.
Right. And our Western cultures and the way that they are and their culture, it just doesn't mesh. And it doesn't go.
Listen, in your state, we have a place called Dearborn, which is causing all sorts of problems in the United States. I believe Michigan is the only state in the Union where the Muslim community is bigger than the Jewish community, for example.
That's right. And also they have that prayer sound that goes off. And if I lived there, that would drive me crazy.
Yeah. Do you know what? In Israel, right, they have the minarets, and they have them there. You know, you hear Muslims call to prayer throughout, for example, Tel Aviv. Right, because there's Jaffa nearby. And because there is a society of tolerance where there are clear rules about equality, it works there. But perhaps in other countries, maybe they could take a leaf out of Israel's book and see, and it might be news to a lot of people, how Arab Israelis who are Muslim, and it accounts for 20% of the population, live in peace with their Jewish and Christian neighbours in Israel. It's a fact.
And the terror cells that we don't know about, Johnny, what about that?
Well,
what do we do about that?
In the US and in Britain, Canada, Australia?
In the UK.
In the UK, we have a serious problem. In fact, there was something foiled today, as you know, a very, very big potential gun attack. Luckily, our forces got on top of it, and thank goodness for their brave work. Cindy, thank you for the call. It's a very sobering evening, isn't it, here at Talk? And if you'd like to get involved in all the discussions we've had so far, you know what to do. 0344 499 1000. And in just a moment, we've got another very, very important conversation with Philip Ingram. And Philip Ingram will be talking with more detail. Stay tuned. He's always a great guest.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm very worried about China, and perhaps you should too. I heard the fight between Russia and Ukraine, that terrible war which started nearly 3 years ago, as effectively a proxy war for China. China's Belt and Road policy of investing in ports around the world with vulnerable countries, with vulnerable economies, and then calling in the debt when these countries go bankrupt and then taking over the port is something that is deeply, deeply worrying. And China is believed to be preparing to fight and defeat Taiwan in the next 2 years. And in this multipolar world where Russia can invade Ukraine, where Iran thinks it can invade Israel through its proxies, which have been thoroughly defeated, where it thinks it can cause havoc in Western nations, is this a real threat? The US will build up a fleet of laser-armed Trump-class warships. Yes, the US understands the threat of China to Taiwan. Let's talk to someone who really knows this, a former senior military intelligence officer. We've spoken before, Philip Ingram, MBE. Welcome, Philip.
Good to see you this evening, Johnny.
And Merry Christmas to you, sir.
And a Merry Christmas to you.
Wow, this China-Taiwan story, one of many tensions in the world, and we should really focus on it because the relationship between the islands around China are at the moment, they are Western orientated apart from North Korea. We think of South Korea, we think of Japan, we think of the Philippines. They're all nominally pro-Western countries. Taiwan in particular is very important to China, but it's also very important to America. Can you explain for our audience why this worldwide tension between these two superpowers?
Well, in essence, it comes down to who is the biggest economy. China is the second largest economy in the world. It's got the ambition to be the largest economy in the world. The United States is the largest economy in the world, and that's why you get the tension between the two of them. And you're right in highlighting that the island chains, the Southeast Asia, the South Pacific region is one where there are an awful lot of tensions because the islands are disputed amongst lots of different countries, and China claims a degree of sovereignty over two sets of islands, the Paracel and the Spratly Islands in the South China and the East China Seas. It's got no historical connection to them whatsoever, but they're also claimed by the Philippines, by Vietnam, and by a number of other countries in the area. But China is being very aggressive in the way it's going about trying to force its sovereignty on different areas. And that aggression is getting to the point where it's actually building artificial islands, which then under international law give it a degree of legality around the territories around it. And that is something that Donald Trump has recognized in this, what's effectively a trade war between the two different countries. And that's played out in sanctions and played out in the way geopolitics is happening. It's really complex, but it is really worrying.
When I spoke to Tim Marshall about this particular part of the Pacific, of Southeast Asia, he gave me the Daniel Defoe. He said reports of America's demise are somewhat overstated, and that he predicted that America, for the rest of our naturals, and maybe even further, would still be the predominant world power. Is that still the right take today, Philip?
It is, because America has got, the economic capability to influence the world. It's got the military might, and it is still the strongest military country. And you combine those two, that then ties in with the greatest influence. And that influence is not just a military influence, it's not just a political influence, it's a trade influence that there is around the world. And China's biggest trading partner is still the West. And China is very carefully balancing off what it does from its own interests, but what it's doing in supporting some of its other allies. Vladimir Putin in his war with Ukraine, with Kim Jong-un in North Korea and elsewhere. And China's traditionally created a lot of enemies around Southeast Asia. You know, it does not get on well, and this is a bit of an understatement, with Japan. And what it's doing with the Philippines and what it's doing with other nations around Southeast Asia is just pushing them to the limit, where they're becoming more Western focused. And you'll notice I haven't talked Taiwan in all of that.
No.
Because Taiwan is something that Xi Jinping, the Chinese leader, has said that he wants to take back, because Taiwan is recognized as part of China under the One China arrangement that most countries around the world recognize. But in reality, Taiwan is a separate country. And Taiwan was formed whenever the Chinese Communist Party revolution happened in mainland China, and the original government of China, therefore the legitimate government of China, withdrew itself to Taiwan and set up a government there. And this is where there's historical tensions that have never been really sorted out properly. As I say, it's extremely complex, but it's extremely worrying.
Are there some resources on Taiwan that are so valuable to both the Chinese and the Americans in their turf war for superiority?
Well, the biggest resource in Taiwan is its manufacturing capability for microchips.
Yes.
80% of the world's microchips
Yes.
are currently manufactured in Taiwan.
Yes.
And therefore, if China made any move to try and take Taiwan through military force or otherwise, and that microchip, the ability to get those microchips out to the industries across the world, and we all rely on them for everything that we have today. If that supply chain got disrupted, even for a short period of time, the economic shock that we'd suffer across the globe would be phenomenal. And that's why Donald Trump is trying to build up similar microchip manufacturing capabilities in the Arizona deserts and other places. And other countries around the world are suddenly going, we need to onshore our microchip manufacturing. But at the moment, it takes years or decades to produce the same sort of capability that Taiwan is producing for the world. But of course, China relies on the microchips out of Taiwan. So what China would want to do is find some way of taking Taiwan, but keeping that manufacturing capability for itself and not disrupting that supply chain.
How difficult is it to set up a Taiwanese outsourced factory in Britain, for example? I mean, we are an island. Imagine in a war where our seas were blocked, where we had to fight a naval war with Russia, who were breathing down our necks in the North Atlantic, and we needed microchips to keep talk on air, among many, many other very important issues.
Is the most vital
in Sunderland or Nottingham or Birmingham or any other place, South Wales, where employment is required, and we need these things not just for ourselves to export.
Well, keeping talk on air is completely vital. I don't think Julia Hartley-Brewer and I would have real difficulties if we couldn't broadcast on Thursdays. And
she's an element of national. The two of you are an element of national security.
And I think when it comes to this, our secret weapon is to the Chinese. We'll just set Julia Hartley-Brewer on, and then we will not have a problem whatsoever.
No problems.
But no, it's a very interesting question. Could we manufacture the volume that's needed? No, it'd be very, very difficult indeed, because it would take an awful lot of capital investment. But we've got a lot of the sophistication. We do a lot of the invention of these things. The UK is phenomenal at what it's invented around the world.
Amazing.
But people don't realize it. A simple thing. Just you see the LED lights that are around the place, and everyone's saying these are the green things that everyone should be going instead of normal lights and all the rest of it. The LED was developed by a defence organisation as part of the UK government. They just failed to capitalise by registering the design themselves and making all the money out of it. But I could go on with more and more and more. But chips, we're very good at. The UK has invented some of the chips that are used in specialist artificial intelligence that's going on around the world now. Now, the Chinese are very good at stealing the designs and then copying them, and that's where we lose out every time. When if it came to war, it would be difficult. We would have difficulty in maintaining our own supply chains, but this is where Donald Trump has gone, I need to onshore the massive production that we're relying on Taiwan, just in case Taiwan blows up, and it's going that way at the moment.
The clue in British invention, going back to the Victorian times, lies in the most obscure towns and their most beautiful town halls. Because if you nip downtown in Nelson, a tiny little town in the north of England, if you go to Eastbourne, if you go to Rochdale, they have these beautiful, ornate, church-like town halls, which speak of a self-respect, of a tradition that Britain was famous for, and we seem to be becoming disconnected from, Philip.
Oh, very much so. Britain has, Westminster's described as the mother of all parliaments. We brought, the model of democracy to a lot of the world, building on what had come out of the Greeks and elsewhere. But our scientific inventions are, second to none. You look at, a lot of what has happened around the world. The jet engine.
Yes.
The
motor
LED
racing is here in this
LED light,
country.
Motorways, and you could we could go on and on and on about British inventions that there are, and we're very good at inventing stuff. We're very bad at exploiting it from a business perspective. Otherwise, the UK would be the richest country in the world by a long, long way. But we play our part as part of a global entity, and we work to the strengths of what's going on. We deal with the horrors that are happening. The UK led the way in the world to deal with slavery when it was in, and to get rid of slavery. And we forget that. We try to, there are so many different groups that are out trying to whip us from behind, saying we have to feel guilty for everything that we've done. Actually, no, I think we should feel proud as a nation for what we've achieved around the world, because we have led the way, whether it be in the moral approach to what's going on. And we've been guilty of some nasty things ourselves, but we have recognized that and led the rest of the world in taking things forward from a moral perspective. From a financial perspective, the City of London is one of the biggest financial centers in the world. From a scientific perspective, we're well recognized across the board. From an education perspective, we've got some of the world's leading universities. We've got more globally recognized universities than the whole of the rest of the EU's got, and people forget that.
Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, thank you very much for enlightening us here on the show. Wishing you a Merry Christmas. Now, England's beleaguered cricketers continue their miserable tour of the Ashes, having already lost them. We've got 2 more test matches to come. But the focus is not on the 3 or 4 test match days that we've lost in Adelaide or various others. It's spending the 4 nights in Queensland between the 2nd and 3rd test. Aye, aye. Apparently, we're going to be investigating reports of players drinking excessively during a break in the beach town of Noosa. We're going to get a pronunciation guide on that, plus more from Elizabeth Ammon from The Times. Stay tuned.
every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
Such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, are taking that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say. So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically.
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Couple more minutes of me and then Duncan Barks takes over. Now listen, England's cricketers were dispatched by Australia in just 11 days of cricket. In 3 test matches, we have lost the test series down under 3-0, and there are 2 more test matches, the Christmas and New Year ones coming up. But it's not the 3/4 days of hammerings of the last 3 test matches that are now the focus. Apparently the squad also spent 4 nights on the Queensland coast in the beach town of Noosa having a bit of a good old time, drinking excessively during a break between the 2nd and 3rd tests. Several outlets have reported that some players were drinking for a significant portion of their time, as well as on 2 previous days in Brisbane, the venue for the 2nd test. A video was shared on social media on Tuesday, which appeared to show England opener Ben Duckett completely drunk. We are 3-0 down. We ain't coming back with the Ashes. The little urn stays there. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Elizabeth Ammon, cricket reporter for The Times. What a mess.
Indeed, when the wheels come off an Ashes tour, they come off spectacularly. But of course, I mean, had they been 3-0 up, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation about them boozing. It all operates within the context of the nature of the loss and the spectacular nature of the loss within 11 days. They're being investigated for their behaviour during what was, it has to be said, an allowed break. This was
right.
They were not working.
Right.
They were on a break.
Okay.
Which, because it's a long tour, they have some downtime. So what Rob Key, who is the director of cricket, is going to investigate is whether they went beyond what would be expected within the confines of being an England cricketer, being paid a lot of money on tour. They might not have been training or working in those breaks, but they were still England cricketers representing English cricket.
But Elizabeth, if we'd been winning 3-0, they wouldn't have been on the lash in quite the same way. There would have been more discipline about the boys, wouldn't there? Isn't this just a sort of consequence of how the preparation for this was really lackadaisical, that we just weren't there for it in the way that we thought we were?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of questions about what's gone wrong
yes.
and why it's gone so spectacularly wrong. One of those, as you rightly point out, is the preparation leading up to the series, which was almost non-existent. Just one warm-up game against the England Lions at a club ground, which didn't really prepare them. These are a bunch of them are inexperienced. They've not been to Australia before. They've not experienced the pressure cooker of an Ashes series. But really, the reason that they were tailgated in Noosa by the media and by people with their camera phones is because of the way they've lost and the nature of the loss and being a bit arrogant. They've been criticised for being a bit arrogant and in a bubble and not really understanding what the public think. And so that all just wraps into, and now are they behaving like they're on just a massive jolly? Of course, if they'd already won the Ashes and got the urn, we wouldn't mind them drinking too much because rightly they'd be celebrating.
Right. What now for English cricket? I mean, we've got 2 dead rubbers, agonising games. And I heard Mitchell Stark today say, yeah, it's been amazing, it's been very special. We want to go for the whitewash. And England must be so demoralised. Futures of not just Ben Stokes, but even Rob Key himself is up for grabs. I mean, are we going to lose 5-0?
No, it's perfectly possible. Yes. I mean, absolutely. I mean, there are some straws which can clutch at, in that the last 2 days of the Adelaide Test, the 3rd Test, the game had been lost.
Yes.
But they put up a fight and they got within 100 of winning.
That's true.
Some players showed some real nous. Zach Crawley, Will Jacks. They bowled quite nicely, a bit better in the second innings. But as you say, there are careers on the line. I don't think we'll see Ollie Pope again this series. And the trouble is that you are sort of slightly mentally broken. And it's so hard to come back. And they are inexperienced. They've got an inexperienced bowling attack. However, Australia are going to be missing Nathan Lyon, their premier spinner, their captain Pat Cummins because of a back injury, and Josh Hazlewood, one of the other seam bowlers, missing for the whole series. There is an opportunity at Melbourne here for them to really show that they've got something about them and that they're not going to go down without a bit of a fight.
Well, I hope not. I hope we come back losing 3-2. I mean, that would be the best outcome for this. I was saying in the handover with Nick Dubois, our previous presenter right here on Talk, that this is a bit of an unnatural state, these very, very long tours, and they were invented before international travel, weren't they? We went over on ships, didn't we? Harold Larwood and the gang. And, you know, isn't it possible that they could be a bit shorter, that an Ashes series might be 3 games, that they might be spread over a little bit longer, that we might be able to fly home, they've got wives, they've got girlfriends. As Nick said pithily, sometimes they've got both of them. But the thing is, it's a bit unnatural, isn't it? This idea of going away for months is a slightly unnatural idea, isn't it, in the 21st century, Elizabeth?
I mean, it is, and they are much longer than kind of footballers have to go for, or rugby players. But, however, I mean, they have been shortened from what they used to be because there's not a load of warm-up games beforehand. So they're there for about 2 months. Now, that's a long time.
It's a long time.
But they are in incredibly nice hotels. I mean, they are incredibly nice. They do get their families flown over for Christmas.
Okay.
Their families, so they have sort of 2 weeks with their families over the Christmas period. And I don't think anybody would want to shorten an Ashes series from 5 to 3. There is a real 5-test series, like we saw against India in the summer, a real part of the test match tradition.
OK. Elizabeth, listen, thank you ever so much for enlightening us there. There's nothing we can do about England's performance because it is all over bar the shouting. The little urn stays down under for now, but we will enjoy at least what we can of the remaining test matches. The 2 dead rubbers coming up over Christmas and New Year, you cricket fans. Burning the midnight oil, as you will, from Christmas night at about 11:30. I know I will, because I'm a bit mad for it. Now, 10 o'clock means a changing of the guard. And we say a warm welcome, a Merry Christmas, to the one and only Duncan Barks.
Well, Johnny, I feel I should salute you.
Don't do it.
Salute away, the changing of the guard. How are you?
Yes, I'm very well,
Good.
Thanks, mate. How are you? Are you chumming them? What an amazing afternoon of stories.
Yeah.
It's been absolutely amazing.
I was
We've
driving
changed the
into
agenda.
London earlier, and I enjoyed your interview with Rupert Lowe.
Yeah, right at the beginning of the show.
I thought it was good. I thought it was really good. I urge anyone who's watching or listening who didn't hear it, catch up on YouTube. Very good.
Yes, thank you, Duncan. We tried to unpack a very difficult issue on halal and kosher slaughter, trying to separate the two. It's a difficult conversation.
It is.
We've agreed to disagree on it.
I don't think, as someone who was listening as a listener, I don't think he quite got it.
No. I don't think he was willing to try and step into other people's shoes on this issue. We do live in a tolerant country, and the proviso, it always has been, as far as I understand, Duncan, that as long as you don't harm anyone else, you can do what you want, and that's why Britain's such a great country.
Yeah, very much
right?
so. Very much so. Yeah, it was a very interesting listen.
Thank you, Duncan. Well, listen, and it's going to remain a very interesting and good televisual excitement. Duncan, what's coming up?
So, there's a story knocking around regarding Reform UK. This isn't really about Reform UK tonight, it's about foreign aid. They want to slash the aid budget by 90%, cap it at £1 billion. Wow. I want to have the conversation tonight here on Talk about foreign aid. How important is it? Some people just go, we should look after this country first. Flip side of that argument is, you know, we're still one of the top 10 richest nations on the planet. We've got some cash. Why not use it to benefit other people? So,
or influence.
Or influence.
It was never just about giving the money away and saying, oh, we're really being nice.
Well,
it was about influencing the world.
They use the phrase soft power, don't they?
Soft power.
Soft power. So we're going to get into that and find out what the nation thinks about foreign aid. Does it have a place, or should we just say, as Reform are, £1 billion, that's it, knock it on the head? Also talking about one of my favourite subjects, pubs.
Yes.
We've got to save the Great British Boozer, Johnny, and we're going to do that after 10 o'clock tonight. We're going to talk to a pub landlady in Essex, the fabulous Rayleigh Arms. We're also going to look at some of the challenges that exist regarding running a pub in 2025, what needs to happen to save the Great British pub, and also, what does it mean to be working class?
Very interesting. I've got a take on that, which is that you remain working class even if you're a millionaire.
Does it depend on what you do?
Well, like, for example, virtually every English footballer in the Premier League is a